I stood on the playground of Shanghai First High School, surrounded by thousands of students in identical uniforms. The air was thick with tension. Today was Awakening Day, the moment every 18-year-old in Blue Star lived for. It was the day we would finally find out if we had what it took to become awakeners. Up on the high platform, 10 students stood before a massive, glowing crystal ball. Their faces were pale, caught between hope and pure terror. Close your eyes. Clear your minds. The awakening begins, a deep, commanding voice boomed. That was our principal, Xiaoheng. He wore heavy mage robes and carried himself with the weight of a man who had reached level 120 as a 4-turn mage. As he spoke, the crystal ball surged. Waves of elemental energy poured out, sinking into the students' bodies. A second later, the platform erupted in light. 9 white flashes, 1 green. Shi Xiangdong. Combat class, warrior. Common grade. Li Aikuan. Lifestyle class, idle trainee. Elite grade. Fan Yunzheng. Support class, priest. Common grade. Principal Xiao waved his hand, his expression staying flat. Next group. The crowd below started whispering immediately. People felt bad for Li Aikuan. Getting an elite grade was great, but being an idle trainee was useless for actual fighting. Fan Yunzheng was the real winner. Even though he was only common grade, he was a healer. Everyone wanted a healer on their team, even if they were slow to level up in the beginning. I stayed quiet, waiting in line. My heart was thumping against my ribs. I had been waiting 18 years for this moment, ever since I was reborn into this world. 1,000 years ago, the abyss invaded Blue Star. The world changed forever. Monsters roamed the streets, cities were leveled, and humanity nearly went extinct. But the invasion brought something else. The world expanded 100 times over, filled with treasures, dungeons, and secret realms. Everything became gamified. Now, at 18, we could awaken into professions, gain levels, and learn skills to fight back. Are you nervous? A soft, delicate hand slid into mine. I looked back and saw Lin Muxua. She was stunning, with eyes that seemed to hold a world of affection. She was the school beauty, the girl every guy dreamed about, and officially, she was my girlfriend. I was an orphan, but I had clawed my way to the top of the rankings at this school. Lin Muxua had started asking me for tutoring back in 10th grade, and we'd been inseparable ever since. We never officially announced anything, but everyone knew. I gave her a small, confident smile. What's there to be nervous about? Ugh, I can smell the romance from here. Think about us poor single dogs, will you? The voice belonged to Zhao Biao. He was a mountain of a man, nearly 7 feet tall and built like a tank. He was a perfect candidate for a frontline warrior. Like me, he grew up in the orphanage. He was the closest thing I had to a brother. Lin Muxua blushed and quickly let go of my hand. Get lost, Biao, I joked. Seriously though, Jiang Yuan, Zhao Biao asked, his grin fading slightly. What do you think we'll get? I'm not a prophet, Biao. How should I know? I paused, looking up at the stage. As long as it's not a lifestyle class, I'm happy. In this world, your class was everything. Combat classes like warriors, mages, and assassins were the heroes on the front lines. Support classes like priests and doctors were rare and highly valued. But lifestyle classes, painters, singers, blacksmiths, they were the bottom of the barrel. Unless you were a top-tier alchemist or artificer, you had zero status. The stats were grim. Over 50% of people ended up as lifestyle workers. 40% became combatants. Less than 10% ever awakened as support. You two are the smartest kids in school, Zhao Biao said. I bet you'll get something legendary. Me? I just want to be a warrior. Classes had tiers, too. White was common, green was elite. Above those were blue rare, purple epic, golden legendary, and the mythical rainbow mythic. The higher the grade, the higher your potential. From your mouth to God's ears, I replied. I knew the theory better than anyone, but I also knew that after 1,000 years, the awakening process was still a total roll of the dice. It didn't matter how hard you studied. It was all down to luck. It's our turn, Lin Muxua whispered. Our group of 10 walked up the steps. As I got closer to the crystal ball, I could feel the raw elemental energy vibrating in the air. It felt like static electricity dancing on my skin. Principal Zhao's eyes lingered on us for a moment. He liked high-achieving students. He raised his staff high, with heaven and earth as the guide, and bloodline as the vessel. Let the awakening begin. He swung the staff. The crystal ball shattered the sunlight into a billion shimmering points of light that rained down on us. The moment the energy touched my skin, it felt like a dam breaking inside me. A warm, massive power surged through my veins, filling every corner of my soul. It felt like parched earth finally tasting rain. A blinding light tore through my vision. Suddenly, the crystal ball let out a roar that shook the entire playground. The gentle white glow vanished, replaced by a violent, brilliant explosion of blue light. It looked like a tidal wave crashing over the platform. The light shifted. It deepened from white to green, and then, in a flash, it turned a piercing, electric sky blue. The blue light shifted again. It deepened into a rich, royal purple. The noisy playground went dead silent. Thousands of eyes were fixed on the high platform, staring at the tall figure enveloped in that thick purple glow. Purple. Deep purple. That's an epic grade class, someone whispered. Who is it? Who's that lucky? Is it the top student, Jiang Yuan? No, look. It's the school beauty, Lin Muxue. A wave of gasps and exclamations rippled through the crowd. I watched as the students looked at her with a mix of shock, envy, and pure awe. My goddess was truly living up to her reputation. Suddenly, the air around Lin Muxue began to spin violently. A white, honeycomb-like pattern formed beneath her feet, kicking up a storm of light particles. Her clothes fluttered wildly, and her long hair lifted in the wind like the wings of a butterfly ready to take flight. This was the raw energy of the wind element. But the real shock came next. A ghostly silhouette of light and shadow began to weave together behind her. It coiled around her body like a living thing, etching complex, ancient patterns onto her forehead. She closed her eyes, her eyelashes trembling. The storm at her feet stopped being chaotic. Instead, it fused with her purple mental energy, creating a spiraling field that made the very space around her ripple. Dual elements? Principal Xiaoheng gasped. His sharp eyes were locked onto the center of the platform. Is she a dual element awakener? The crystal ball's energy suddenly contracted, surging into Lin Muxue's body with terrifying force. The other 9 of us on stage felt like flickering candles next to a bonfire. Our energy combined wasn't even a tenth of hers. Huge wings erupted from her back. They were made of cyan wind, their edges shimmering with purple specks of mental energy like stars in a night sky. A clear, melodic cry echoed across the playground, sounding like a call from ancient times. A phantom image of a Qinghuan, a divine bird, appeared above her head, circling with its wings spread wide. Cyan wind and purple spirit energy fused into a brilliant pillar of light that shot straight into the heavens. Lin Muxue slowly opened her eyes. One pupil held the swirling patterns of the wind, the other held the purple mark of the spirit. She looked majestic, yet ethereal. She could feel it now. The wind was an extension of her own limbs, and her mental power was like invisible tentacles, sensing the emotions of everyone around her. She could even dive into their minds if she wanted to. The Qinghuan phantom circled one last time before shrinking into a beam of light that vanished into her forehead, leaving a tiny bird mark behind. As the purple light faded, Lin Muxue quickly turned to look at me. I was standing there with my eyes closed, covered in a faint, dull white glow. Compared to her radiance, I looked completely eclipsed. But I wasn't looking at her. I was focused on the cold, mechanical voice ringing in my head. Ding! Congratulations, host. Awakening successful. Infinite augmentation system activated. The system. It was finally here. 18 years. Do you have any idea how I've lived these past 18 years? I was screaming with joy on the inside. Jiang Yuan, are you okay? Lin Muxue's worried voice pulled me back. I opened my eyes and saw the faint remnants of the Qinghuan spirit behind her. I gave her a reassuring look. I'm fine, I said. I looked over at the crystal screen. The results were up for everyone to see. Lin Muxue, Combat Class, Qinghuan Covenant Master, Epic Grade. Jiang Yuan, Combat Class, Mage, Common Grade. Zhao Biao, Support Class, Priest, Common Grade. Among the sea of common, white text, Lin Muxue's epic rank was blindingly noble. We were the school's power couple, always ranked first and second in grades. But now our destinies had split wide apart. The top student had become a common mage. The gap was massive. Lin Muxue, meanwhile, was now a being beyond reach. The Qinghuan Covenant Master, the legendary Qinghuan Covenant Master. Principal Zhao's voice was shaking. It was the first time I'd ever seen him lose his cool. Is it that special, Principal? I asked. Even with all my studying, I hadn't come across this specific class in the textbooks. I saw it in a fragmented ancient text once, Xiao Heng said, his eyes bright. The Qinghuan is a divine beast of wind and spirit. It's one of the most powerful ancient inheritances. To think it reappeared today? At her peak, she'll be able to summon the actual divine Qinghuan to fight by her side. He didn't even bother calling the next group up. This one girl was enough to put our school at the top of the entire city. That sounds incredible, I remarked. Of course it is, the principal said, looking at her with pride. Even though it's labeled epic because it involves a divine beast and dual elements, its potential is equal to a legendary gold class. It's immeasurable. He then looked at me, his excitement cooling into a trace of pity and disappointment. As for you, a mage is, well, it's all right. You can still improve through future job advancements. It's good enough for me, I nodded. My only goal was a combat class. Getting a system on top of that was an unbelievable bonus. I had already skimmed the system's functions. Every time I used a skill, its power would double, permanently, and it stacked infinitely. With a system like that, who cares if I'm a common mage? I'll eventually be stronger than any epic or mythic hero. He's right, Lin Muxue said, her beautiful eyes searching mine. She couldn't sense any disappointment in my mental waves. In fact, she sensed a hidden, intense joy. She assumed I was just happy for her. We can level up together. You always taught me the theory. From now on, I'll protect you. Thanks, Muxue, I smiled. I guess I'll be living off your hard work then. I felt relieved. Our relationship hadn't changed just because our grades did. She wasn't becoming arrogant, and I wasn't feeling inferior. Hey, can you two think about the single dog standing right here? Zhao Biao grumbled as we walked off the stage. Talk about a mismatch. Zhao Biao was a 2-meter-tall mountain of a man, built like a tank, yet he had awakened as a priest. The mental image of this giant in white robes screaming, "I'm the healer," while charging into battle made my skin crawl. Stop complaining, Lin Muxue said, glancing at him. We'll take you with us when we go grinding. I might be a priest, Zhao Biao said with a grin, but when the time comes, don't think I won't charge the front lines right alongside you. He had a point. Support classes were notoriously weak in the early stages, but their importance was undeniable. In any party, a good healer was always more popular than a generic warrior. Plus, during a fight, they usually stayed in the back, keeping everyone healthy while staying out of the line of fire. A priest doesn't have to just be a support, I told him, thinking back to the theory I had mastered. If you advance correctly, you could become a light knight or a punishing priest. You'd be tanky, you'd have high damage, and you'd still be able to heal. In this world, the class awakening was just the starting line. Every 30 levels, a professional could undergo a job advancement. It was the only way to turn a basic class into something elite. This was exactly why I wasn't discouraged about being a common mage. My future depended on how I developed my skills. And of course, I had a literal god-tier system backing me up. So, should we head to the dungeon plaza now? Lin Muxue asked, looking at me for the lead. Let's hit the commercial street next to the plaza first, I replied after a moment of thought. We need to buy some skills and basic gear. Wait, Zhao Biao interjected. Don't we need more teammates? He looked at the three of us and frowned. Our team composition was a mess. A standard, balanced party usually needed a mage or archer for main DPS, a warrior or tank to soak up damage, an assassin or scout for reconnaissance, and a support for buffs. Even though Lin Muxue's Blue Phoenix contractor class was epic tier, she was still technically a magic user. If we ran into monsters with high magic resistance, she and I would both be useless. We were missing physical damage and a real frontline tank. The moment Zhao Biao finished speaking, a crowd of students who had awakened as tanks, warriors, and archers swarmed us. Lin Yuan, count me in. I'm an elite grade demon blood warrior. I've got double the HP of a normal tank. I can take any hit. Mushiwa, I awakened as a rare-grade hurricane mage. Having another magic user won't hurt, right? I'm a stealth assassin. I can scout the monsters and make sure the team stays safe. Dozens of combat class students surrounded us. Many were elite or even rare grades. They knew that teaming up with the school's top 2 stars, Lin Yuan and Lin Mushiwa, was a golden ticket to easy leveling. Most were there for Lin Mushiwa, obviously, but they didn't count me out either. Even as a common mage, I had a reputation for perfect grades and flawless tactical simulations. I was the ideal team captain. We'll buy our supplies first, I said, keeping my voice steady. If you want to join, meet us in front of the novice dungeon later. I wasn't ready to accept anyone yet. Under normal circumstances, I would have picked the best candidates, but with my system, I had a massive secret to keep. I didn't even know how powerful my infinite stacking would look in practice. Bringing strangers along was a risk I couldn't take. As we walked away, I heard a cold snort behind us. Who does he think he is? Just a common mage acting like he's still the top student, a voice spat. Theory doesn't mean crap anymore. This is the era of professionals. An orphan mage like him isn't fit to shine my shoes. The speaker was Zhou Luochun, a high and mighty teenager who had awakened as a rare-grade hurricane mage. In the school rankings, Lin Mushiwa was number 1, and he was a bitter number 2. Brother Chun is right, one of his lackeys chimed in. He's just riding Lin Mushiwa's coattails. With the Lin family's power and her talent, she'll dump that loser soon enough. Exactly. A toad trying to eat swan meat. You and Mushiwa are the real match made in heaven. Zhou Luochun watched us leave, his eyes filled with resentment. He came from the Zhou family, one of the 4 great families of Shanghai City. He had always lived in our shadow, and he was done with it. A swan? She's a phoenix, Zhou Luochun muttered, pulling out his smart bracelet to send a message. A commoner orphan has no place beside her. I don't even need to do anything. Her family will tear them apart for me. He smirked. He would wait for them to break up, then step in to claim Lin Mushiwa. As for me, he figured a few accidents would be enough to make a common mage disappear forever. I didn't care about the gossip. My mind was focused on the system interface floating in my vision. Asterisk infinite augmentation system. Every time a skill is used, its power increases by 100% permanently. No upper limit. Every 10 uses, power increases by 10x and unlocks a special effect. Further milestones at 100x, 1000x, and 10,000x. Asterisk. I realized the strategy immediately. To maximize this, I couldn't use high-level, long cooldown spells. I needed skills with the shortest possible cooldowns and the lowest mana costs. If a spell took 2 hours to refresh, I'd never stack the buffs. I needed frequency. We arrived at the South District Commercial Street. It was packed with professionals buying and selling monster materials, gear, and skill books. We stopped in front of a shop called the Heavenly Book Pavilion. The moment I stepped inside, the noise of the street vanished, replaced by an invisible barrier of silence. The air smelled of old ink and ancient wood. The ceiling was impossibly high, supported by dark gold pillars that looked like they belonged in an ancient tomb. This was where my journey would truly begin. Swirling cloud patterns and colored runes were carved into the massive pillars. Beneath my feet, the deep green jade tiles were polished so brightly I could see my own reflection. Everywhere I looked, shelves were packed with items. Gold plaques hung from each row, displaying categories in ancient script, skill scrolls, books of knowledge, attribute pages, secret technique scrolls, and ancient tombs. Next to every item, there was a price tag and a detailed description. People moved through the aisles in an orderly fashion, while staff members in green robes embroidered with the Heavenly Book logo assisted customers. "What can I help you find today?" a pretty female clerk asked, approaching us with a professional smile. "We're having a sale. Some items are up to 70% off." She gestured toward an area on the right side of the pavilion. It was crowded, mostly with people who looked like students. Since today was Awakening Day, the Heavenly Book Pavilion was running a massive promotion to lure in the new class of professionals. They were likely selling at a loss just to build brand loyalty with us early on. "Let's go check it out," I said. Jiang Yuan nodded. A sale was exactly what she needed, considering how little money she had. Lin Muxue stayed close to my side as we pushed into the more cramped, densely packed section of the shop. I scanned the shelves quickly to get my bearings. Skill scrolls were the main way for professionals to learn new abilities. Books of knowledge provided skill points to level them up. Attribute pages were even better. They permanently boosted base stats like strength or agility. Then there were secret technique scrolls, which held the sealed power of high-level professionals, and ancient tombs, which contained lost secrets from dangerous ruins. What kind of skill are you looking for, Jiang Yuan? Lin Muxue asked. An offensive one, I said without hesitation. Fire, lightning, or wind. Elements first. I had done my homework long before today. I'd studied every profession and mapped out my growth plan. My current stats were basic, level 0, with 10 points in strength, spirit, agility, and constitution. My mana was at 100, and my health was a measly 50. My talent, magic proficiency, let me learn any basic spell from any branch of magic. The downside was that I was a jack of all trades. I didn't get the massive damage bonuses that specialized mages, like a pure fire mage, would receive. You should pick one element and stick to it, Lin Muxue advised. If you learn too many different types, you'll be weak in all of them. Focus is the only way to get strong. I know, I replied. I looked at her. But what about you? You're a mythical tier Azure Phoenix envoy. Buying these common skills seems like a waste of your potential. Skill slots were precious. You only got one every 10 levels. If you filled them with junk early on, you'd ruin your future. I'm just looking for now, she said softly. She was right to be picky. As an Azure Phoenix envoy, she could use wind and spirit magic, plus summoning skills. She needed something legendary to match her tier. Besides, her family was wealthy. They probably had a better plan for her than anything found on a discount rack. I'm going to check over there, Zhao Biao said, pointing toward the priest section. We split up. I headed toward the mage scrolls. My eyes landed on a glowing red scroll. Skill, Fire Arrow, Tier 1. Source, Fire City Dungeon. Description, compresses fire energy into a sharp bolt. Deals piercing fire damage with a chance to explode. Cooldown, 1 minute. Mana cost, 200. Evaluation, 4 stars. Price, 2,000 gold. Original, for 1,800. The description was incredibly detailed, verified by a professional appraiser named Zheng Hai. The pavilion guaranteed these stats. If a skill didn't perform as described, you could actually hold the appraiser personally responsible. Fire Arrow, I muttered. The damage was good, but that 1-minute cooldown was a deal breaker for my system. I needed something faster. Junyao, what are you doing here? Lin Muxue's surprised voice pulled me away from the shelf. A woman in a dark, form-fitting qipao stood next to her. She was elegant and mature, her curves highlighted by the silk fabric. Her hair was held up by a jade hairpin, and she carried the confident air of someone in charge. I should ask you the same thing, the woman said, her voice smooth and teasing. Coming here without telling me? Do you not see me as your sister anymore? Her eyes, sharp and playful, shifted from Lin Muxue to me. And who is this? Your little boyfriend? He's quite handsome. It's not like that. Lin Muxue blushed instantly. She turned to me, flustered. Jiang Yuan, this is Si Junyao. She's the manager of this branch of the Heavenly Book Pavilion. The Heavenly Book Pavilion was more than just a store. It was a global powerhouse, a super organization spanning multiple countries. Even here in Shanghai City, this single branch held massive influence. They dominated the skill scroll market, controlling over 90% of the trade. The branch manager was a figure so powerful that even the city lord treated them like royalty. I looked at Si Junyao, realizing her relationship with Lin Muxue was deeper than I thought. If Lin Muxue was a budding white peony, Si Junyao was a mature, blooming red rose. She was striking, especially with her confident posture and commanding presence. Hey, handsome, Si Junyao said, her eyes scanning me briefly before turning back to Muxue. See any skills you like? Since you're with Muxue, I'll give you one for free. I think this living history book would suit you. She wasn't really interested in me. I could see it in her eyes. To her, I was just a handsome face with a mediocre class. She was only here because of Lin Muxue. Word of Muxue's epic tier awakening as a Blue Phoenix contractor had already spread across the city. It was the first epic awakening in 17 years. No thanks, I said, shaking my head. I haven't done anything to deserve such a gift. Free things always come with a price. Even if she didn't want a favor from me, I'd be putting the debt on Mushua's shoulders. Besides, that specific book didn't fit my needs at all. Sister Junyao, you're so biased. Mushua pouted, shaking Si Junyao's arm. Why don't you give me one? If my little sister asks, how could I refuse? Si Junyao laughed. We have scrolls perfect for a blue phoenix, but we need your father's permission first. We can't mess up your growth path. Suddenly, Si Junyao's gaze shifted toward the entrance. A man and a woman were pushing through the crowd, heading straight for us with aggressive strides. Fourth lady, the man said, nodding briefly to Si Junyao. He was in his 30s and looked frantic. He turned his sharp eyes toward Mushua. Mushua, how can you just run off like this? Your father is worried sick. Come home right now. Brother? I'll go back later, Mushua said, shrinking back slightly. I already promised my classmate we'd run a dungeon together. No. Now, Lin Yufan snapped. Do you have any idea how much noise your awakening caused? Our enemies are already moving. If you want to level up, you do it under family protection. He didn't care what she wanted. He turned to me, his expression turning cold. Jiang Yuan, right? I'm Mushua's cousin. I'm here on the orders of the clan head to take her home. He stepped closer, his voice dropping into a stern, lecturing tone. Mushua is the eldest daughter of the Lin family. She's been sheltered. She can afford to be naive, but not anymore. She is the future of our clan. She carries our legacy. He stared me down. When he said the word naive, he emphasized it heavily. He wasn't talking to her. He was warning me. He was reminding me that she was an epic tier genius, and I was an orphan with a basic mage class. We lived in different worlds. He was telling me to disappear before things got ugly. Brother, what are you saying? Mushua cried out, her face flushing with anger. Joey, take her home. Now, Lin Yufan commanded. The woman behind him moved like a blur. Suddenly, a crushing pressure filled the room. The air felt like solid lead. My blood seemed to stop flowing in my veins. I couldn't move a finger. I could only watch as the woman reached Mushua. Mushua, I tried to shout, but she was already gone. In the blink of an eye, both she and the woman had vanished. Don't worry. She's safe, Lin Yufan said, standing right in front of me. His voice was ice. Much safer than she is with you. She's young, and we don't want her taking the wrong path. And we don't want you making a mistake either. Which path I take is none of your business, I replied, my brow furrowed. I didn't like his arrogance one bit. Stop contacting her, he said flatly. You aren't the same kind of people. She is the Lin family's future. She'll be given everything. She has a mission. A mission, I countered. Mushua is a person, not a tool. Her happiness should matter more than your mission. That's what you think, Lin Yufan sneered. In a great family, your fate is tied to the clan. You can't break that bond unless you become powerful enough to stop the entire family from interfering. But look at you. He looked at me like I was an insect. The Lin family had looked into me before. Back when I was a top student, they didn't mind us hanging out. If I had awakened a powerful class, they might have even encouraged it. But there were no ifs in this world. To them, a common mage was trash. That day will come, I said, looking him straight in the eyes. And it won't be long. Such confidence from a brat, Lin Yufan laughed coldly. Stay away from her. If you don't, you might just disappear one day, and nobody will even know you're dead. He gave me one last look of pure contempt, then turned to Si Junyao with a polite smile. Sorry for the disturbance, fourth lady. Goodbye. I watched him walk away, my fists clenched so tight my knuckles turned white. I had lived in this world for 18 years. I knew how it worked. It was a world of the strong eating the weak. Without power, you had no voice. My friend had been dragged away, and her family had just threatened my life. I felt the fire burning in my chest. I needed to get stronger, and I needed to do it now. Si Junyao watched me closely, her eyes scanning my face for any sign of a breakdown. I looked calm, maybe even indifferent, which seemed to surprise her. You don't look angry at all, she noted, studying my expression. Would getting angry help? I asked. I wasn't lying, but I wasn't being entirely honest either. Inside, I was fuming, but logic had taken the wheel. Rage wouldn't change the fact that I was weak. Only power mattered now. Fair point, she sighed. But Lin Yufan wasn't just talking trash. He's dangerous. For Mushiwa's sake, don't pick a fight with the Lin family right now. You're not in a position to win, and it'll only make things harder for her. She was worried I'd do something reckless. She thought I was a pebble trying to smash a boulder. She didn't realize that even a pebble can start an avalanche if it hits the right spot. Don't worry, I said with a slight nod. I won't make things difficult for her. She smiled, her elegant figure swaying as she walked away. I turned my attention back to the display cases. I needed skills. I saw Flame Wave, a Tier 1 fire skill. It dealt massive area damage in a 5-meter cone and left enemies burning. It was a top-tier skill, priced at 5,000 gold. Then there was Lightning Refinement for 3,500 and Windblade for 1,200. I kept browsing, looking for 3 things: skill type, cooldown, and price. Most people wanted high-damage skills with long cooldowns. I was different. Because of my infinite augmentation system, I needed the lowest cooldowns possible. A massive nuke that I could only fire once a minute was useless to me compared to a weak spell I could fire every second. The problem was my wallet. I had less than 1,000 gold. In this world, that was enough to live on for a while, but it was pocket change for a professional awakened. Then I saw it. Tucked away in a dusty corner was a scroll no one wanted. Skill, Fireball. Tier 1. Description: condenses a tiny amount of fire element into a ball the size of an egg. Deals negligible burn damage. Cooldown: 2 seconds. Mana cost: 2 points. Rating: 0 stars. The description was brutal. It called the scroll a failed replica and said it was more of a collector's item than a functional skill. It wasn't even a complete spell. The price was 800 gold, marked down from a ridiculous original price of 80,000. I stared at the name of the appraiser, Su Han. He was a level 5 master appraiser. In this city, there were barely 5 people at level 4, and Su Han was the only level 5. Why would a master waste his time appraising a piece of junk? To everyone else, this was trash. To me, it was a godsend. A 2-second cooldown? That was unheard of. With my system, negligible damage wouldn't stay negligible for long. I'll take this one, I told a nearby clerk. She looked at me like I had grown a second head. Sir, are you sure? This has been sitting here for 6 months. Even at a 99% discount, it's a failure. I'm sure, I said firmly. The transaction took less than a minute. I walked away with the scroll, feeling a surge of excitement. Jiang Yuan, you done? Zhao Biao popped up from the crowd, clutching a stack of books. He had spent his entire life savings on basic attribute pages and a single skill. I'm broke now. We'll have to rely on mob drops for gear, but I hear the drop rates in the novice dungeon are trash. He didn't mention Mushiwa. He had seen the whole thing and probably thought I was better off moving on. In his eyes, the gap between a commoner and the Lin family was a canyon we couldn't cross. We headed toward the dungeon plaza. High above in the pavilion, Si Junyao watched us from a window. She had been notified the moment I bought the scroll. A strange look crossed her face. That fireball scroll was actually the very first one she had ever created, a sentimental failure she never expected to sell. She wondered if I had seen something in it that everyone else had missed. I didn't care what she thought. I had my first weapon. Now, it was time to level up. The scroll I bought was more than just a piece of paper. To see Junyao, watching me from her window, it was a sentimental relic. She had written that collection value comment herself because it was the first scroll she ever made. She watched me with confusion in her eyes. There was no way I actually planned to use that fireball skill as my primary attack, right? To her, I didn't seem like the type of idiot who would make such a basic mistake. I didn't care about her doubts. Zhao Biao and I arrived at the dungeon plaza, and the place was pure chaos. It looked and sounded like a crowded wet market. Vendors were everywhere, screaming at the top of their lungs. Tiger Soul Heart, freshly dropped. Only 700 gold. Health and mana potions on sale. Buy now or regret it later. Need a healer for Shadowwind Valley. Level 60 minimum. Fast runs, loot based on contribution. Looking for a rank 2 tank. Must have full defensive gear. Ever since the Abyss invaded reality, the world had changed. Special zones appeared everywhere. Dungeons, secret realms, wilderness, ruins, and the Abyss itself. Dungeons were unique. They were fragments of history or specific areas frozen in time by the laws of the world. No matter how much damage you caused inside, they reset to their original state after a while. You could run them as many times as you wanted, though the rewards dropped significantly after the first clear. In a city like Shanghai, the powerful families and guilds controlled everything. They had literally moved stable dungeons into the city limits to keep them safe. But safety came at a price. Entering a dungeon required an expensive ticket, and the controlling factions usually had the right of first refusal on any rare loot you found. They took the lion's share of the profits while we took the crumbs. The only upside for a rookie like me was the low mortality rate. Most of these places had been cleared so many times that you could buy a step-by-step guide on how to survive. We reached the teleportation gates for the novice dungeons. Groups of students from Shanghai High were already huddling together, forming teams. I recognized a few faces from class. "We should probably find a team," Zhao Biao said, looking at me for guidance. "Hey Zhao Biao, want to join us? We need a healer." A boy named Luo Heng walked over, holding a Magitech rifle. He had a team of 4 behind him. They weren't like us. They were already decked out in basic gear, white and green tier items that boosted their stats. Zhao Biao and I were still wearing our faded school uniforms, which provided 0 protection. Zhao Biao looked tempted. Back at school, people only asked us to team up because of Mushua. Now that she was gone, a basic mage and a basic priest weren't exactly high-demand recruits. "Who's in your group?" Zhao Biao asked. "We've got a Thundercaster, a Wind Hunter, and a Berserker," Luo Heng said confidently. "I'm a Blast Gunner. We're all elite-tier classes with full gear. We'll breeze through the dungeon. We just need a healer to top us off." It was a strong team. Rare and epic classes were 1 in a million, so an all-elite team was top tier for students. "Can Jiang Yuan join too?" Zhao Biao asked, hesitating. Novice dungeons didn't have a strict player limit, but 5 was the sweet spot. Any more than that, and the experience points got spread too thin. The loot drops became a nightmare to divide. Luo Heng looked at me with a polite, apologetic smile. "Sorry, Jiang Yuan. We already have a magic DPS slot filled. We really just need the healer. Honestly, with our setup, we'll be fine, but a priest just makes it safer." He knew I was a top student, but in this world, grades didn't matter as much as your class tier. "It's fine," I said, waving it off. "Go with them, Zhao Biao." I was actually relieved. With my system, I didn't want anyone watching me. Even someone as close as Zhao Biao would eventually start asking questions I couldn't answer. "No way," Zhao Biao snapped. "We'll find another group." "Don't be stupid," I said, grabbing his arm. "Healers have a hard time leveling up early on. You're team dependent. This is the best chance you've got." If he wasn't a priest, they wouldn't have looked at him twice. Elite classes usually look down on common ones. After a bit more convincing, Zhao Biao finally gave in and joined Luo Heng's squad. I watched them disappear through the dungeon gate. I was alone now, exactly how I wanted it. I walked over to a nearby stall and spent my remaining gold on basic supplies. I bought a few iron flasks for health and some mana potions, the standard reds and blues. Then, I walked up to the dungeon guard and showed him my student ID. "Just you?" the guard asked, checking my credentials. "Just me," I replied. "Novice dungeons only go up to level 10, but they're still dangerous for a fresh awakening," he warned, his voice flat. "You sure you don't want a team?" "I'm sure." "Fine. Here's your pass. It's valid for 10 days. You have unlimited access to the 5 novice dungeons during that time. You can teleport out whenever you finish, or if you get into trouble, activate the pass. It takes 5 seconds to warp you out, so make sure you aren't being hit during the countdown." I thanked him and took the pass. I stepped toward the shimmering portal, and 5 names appeared in my vision. Shadowhunter Valley, ruins of the uncontrolled city, the machine graveyard, the lava lands, the pure land mine. I took a deep breath and made my choice. It was time to see what a 1 silver fireball could really do. I knew plenty about the novice dungeons. The first one was discovered 500 years ago, around the same time Shanghai City was built. Over the centuries, every detail of these places had been mapped out. You could find complete walkthroughs online with a simple search. I scanned the list and made my choice, the machine graveyard. A low hum filled my ears. My head spun for a second as the world blurred, and then I was there. I stood on a pile of jagged metal wreckage under a sky choked with thick, glowing energy fog. The air tasted like rust and old oil. Beneath my boots, skeletal mechanical limbs groaned and scraped, making a sharp, grating sound with every step I took. According to the guides, this place was a failed experimental site from a forgotten high-tech era. It was a wasteland of haywire machinery and leaking energy. The monsters here were born from that radiation, constantly pulling scrap metal together to form new, twisted shapes. It looked a lot like the ruins of old Earth from 1,000 years ago. It was a grim reminder. If we couldn't stop the abyss, our world would end up just like this, a pile of smoking scrap. A harsh metallic scraping cut through my thoughts. To my left, the wreckage of a mechanical dog twitched to life. It was built from tarnished brass, with a heavy boiler humming in its chest. Its eyes were red sensors that flickered as they scanned the area. They locked onto me. A status window popped up. This was a perk of novice dungeons. In the wild or higher level zones, you needed a specific scouting skill to see this data. Name, Mechanical Hound. Race, Machine. Level, 1. Attack, 16. Defense, 33. Health, 250. Talent, Self-Repair. Skill, Cruise Hunt. The hound lunged. I didn't panic. I raised my hand and fired a fireball. A small streak of red light, about the size of an egg, sliced through the air and slammed into the hound's chest. There was a hiss. The hound didn't even flinch. I checked its health. 249. It had taken exactly 1 point of damage. The heat from my spell was actually lower than the temperature of the boiler inside its chest. At this rate, I'd need 250 shots to kill one basic mob. The hound's sensors blinked rapidly. It almost felt like it was mocking me. These things were common here because they were fast and had high physical defense. Their only weakness was a total lack of magic resistance, but my failure of a spell was too weak to exploit it. I didn't let it get to me. I expected this. A chime rang in my head. Ding. Fireball used. Skill power doubled. Current multiplier, 2x. I threw another one. This fireball was noticeably larger. It hit the hound with a dull thud. 2 seconds later, I launched a third. Ding. Current multiplier, 3x. Ding. Current multiplier, 4x. The notifications started stacking fast. By the time I reached the 10th cast, the system voice changed. Ding. Fireball multiplier has reached 10x. New effect unlocked. 9-star Lotus. The system informed me I could toggle these effects whenever I wanted. I didn't wait. I focused my mana. The fire element in my palm went wild, turning a deep, angry orange. The glow reflected off my face as 9 fireballs, each the size of a soccer ball, manifested in the air. I released them. They flew in a perfect line, one after another. They slammed into the hound in a brutal sequence. The heat was immense. The flames crawled into the hound's internal pipes, turning the brass casing glowing red in seconds. The machine let out a shrill, screeching wail of escaping steam before collapsing into a heap of charred, smoking junk. 10 times the power. Even a top-tier first-turn spell wouldn't be this strong. Ding. Killed level 1 mechanical hound. Gained 10 EXP, 1 skill EXP, and brass scraps. Ding. You have leveled up to level 1. All attributes increased by 10. Gained 10 free attribute points. Warmth flooded my body. Leveling up felt incredible. Getting from level 0 to level 1 only took 10 experience points, so 1 kill did the trick. I knew it would get harder. Level 2 required 100 points, but the stat boost was massive. I checked my stats. Every attribute was at 20 now. For a common class like mine, I got 10 free points per level. Elite classes got 20, and epic classes like Mushiwa got 40. Usually, the gap between a commoner and a genius only gets wider as they level up. Under normal circumstances, catching up to her would be impossible. But I wasn't normal anymore. With this kind of damage, even a legendary class wouldn't be able to keep up with me. I looked at my points. As a mage, everything depended on my spirit attribute. It was the root of my power. The higher it went, the more devastating my spells became. It was time to go all in. I stared at my status window. For a mage like me, every single point of spirit gave me 10 points of mana. It boosted my damage and my skill efficiency. If I wasted points on Constitution, I'd only get 5 measly health points. I wasn't a tank. They got 20 health points for that same investment. If I put points into Agility, I'd only get 5 points of speed, while an assassin or archer would get double that. The gap between classes was brutal. As I leveled up, that divide would only grow. That's why I didn't hesitate. I dumped every single free attribute point into Spirit. It was about efficiency. If I needed defense later, I'd learn an Earth or Metal Shield spell. If I was too slow, I'd find a Wind spell. If my health was too low, I'd hunt for a skill that converted mana into a shield. All of those spells relied on Spirit. The higher my Spirit, the thicker my shields, and the faster my movement spells. Putting points anywhere else was just stupid. I didn't want to end up as a mage who couldn't deal damage, a tank who couldn't take a hit, and a runner who was slower than an archer. I chose my path. I pushed all 10 points into Spirit, bringing it to 30. My fireball damage tripled instantly. Creak. The sound of grinding metal echoed across the wasteland. Dark, mechanical tentacles burst from the cracks in the ground. Dozens of glowing red eyes flickered to life in the shadows. The noise from my last fight had woken the graveyard. A tide of brass-clad mechanical hounds surged toward me like a metallic wave. They were only level 1 and 2, but the sheer number of them was suffocating. Any other student team would have turned and run. Perfect timing, I muttered. You guys look hungry for some heat. I thrust my right hand forward. Fire elements converged in my palm, deepening from a bright orange to a heavy, molten crimson. It looked like a chunk of white-hot iron pulled straight from a forge. 9 basketball-sized fireballs shrieked through the air, trailing plumes of intense heat. They slammed into the lead hounds with a series of muffled explosions, melting brass chassis into puddles of slag instantly. More hounds rushed in. I didn't stop. I threw fireballs like they cost me nothing. If anyone had been watching, their jaws would have hit the floor. A level 1 common mage shouldn't be able to spam high-intensity spells like this. But for me, each cast only took 2 seconds and cost a measly 2 mana points. With a mana pool of 300, I could do this 150 times before breaking a sweat. The graveyard turned into a slaughterhouse of sparks and flames. Ding. Killed level 1 mechanical hound. Gained 9 EXP, 1 skill EXP. Ding. Killed level 2 mechanical hound. Gained 35 EXP, 1 skill EXP. Ding. Killed level 6 mechanical hound. Gained 180 EXP, 1 skill EXP. Dropped mechanical equipment. The notifications blurred together as the flames rose. Ding. Level up to level 3. All attributes plus 10. 10 free points gained. Ding. Level up to level 4. All attributes plus 10. 10 free points gained. I didn't even stop to breathe. I dumped all the new points into Spirit again. I glanced at the loot, a mechanical arm. It was unappraised, so I couldn't see the stats or wear it yet. I tossed it into my inventory. Every awakened had 100 slots for storage, and mine was starting to fill with scrap. I checked my system. My fireball was currently at a 35x amplification. The 9-star Lotus effect was strong, but I needed 65 more casts to hit the 100x threshold. I looked ahead. The metal ruins were gone, replaced by a sea of fire and charred wreckage. I started walking deeper into the core of the graveyard, casting fireballs into the smoke just to keep the count rising. I came here for a reason. I needed the ultimate effect. Meanwhile, in another part of the graveyard, things weren't going so well. I can't hold them. Heal me, Zhao Yifeng screamed. He was a berserker, the only melee fighter in his team, and he was currently being swarmed by mechanical arms. His armor was dented, his body was covered in gashes, and his health was plummeting. His skills were still on a 50-second cooldown. Hold on, Zhao Biao shouted, rushing forward. I'll help you tank. Zhao Yifeng was stunned. Zhao Biao was a healer, but he was stepping up to the front line to split the pressure. Fine, you take the right side. In the back, their leader Luo Xing raised his Magitech rifle, firing rounds into the brass hulls of the hounds. A lightning caster and a wind hunter joined in, their spells and arrows flying wildly. They were a new team, messy and uncoordinated, but they were fighting for their lives. Eventually, the last hound in their area fell. Jiao Yefeng collapsed to the ground, his health bar blinking red. "I thought we were dead," he wheezed. A soft, holy light washed over him. He looked up and saw Zhao Biao, his face bruised and battered, offering a tired smile. "Thanks, brother," Jiao Yefeng grunted, finally catching his breath. Jiao Yefeng hadn't really respected Zhao Biao at first. To him, a common tier healer was just dead weight. But after that fight, his mind changed completely. He realized Zhao Biao was a teammate he could actually trust, someone who would put his own life on the line when things got ugly. In that moment, the healer truly became part of the team. Most professional squads are forged in the fires of battle like this. It's not just about power or coordination, it's about character. "Don't mention it," Zhao Biao said, offering a weak smile. But I could see the worry in his eyes. We all thought a novice dungeon would be a walk in the park. We were wrong. Even with a team of 4 elite-tier fighters and a healer, we were barely scraping by. It turned out that studying in a classroom was just empty talk. You don't know how brutal combat is until you're bleeding out on the ground. Every year, plenty of students die in these beginner zones because they get arrogant. If we were struggling this much, I couldn't imagine how the others were doing. Zhao Biao's thoughts drifted to his best friend, Lin Yuan. He just hoped Lin Yuan had found a solid team to carry him through. "We were too reckless just now," Luo Hang said, breaking the silence. He was the leader, and he was already analyzing our mistakes. "We need to play it safe. We'll stay on the outskirts, hunt some stray mechanical hunters, and get everyone's level up first." He pulled out a map marked with red dots. Each dot was a monster. The closer to the center you got, the thicker the dots became. Right in the heart of the map, there was a patch so red it looked black. That was the extreme danger zone. I had no idea my buddy Zhao Biao was worried about me. At that exact moment, I was strolling casually through that very same extreme danger zone. I raised my hand and flicked a finger. A fireball, bright as a miniature sun, streaked through the air and slammed into a 6-foot-tall mechanical monster. The machine didn't just break, it disintegrated. A notification pinged in my head. I had used Fireball again. The power doubled. My current multiplier hit 100x. Since I reached the 100-fold mark, a new special effect unlocked. Flame Burst. Now, when my fireballs hit a target or traveled a certain distance, they triggered a massive explosion. It dealt splash damage, caused heavy internal bleeding, and had a chance to stun. With a 100x damage boost and Flame Burst, this basic spell was now stronger than most Tier 2 fire magic. I was honestly stunned. Fireball was supposed to have the lowest base stats in the game, but with the multiplier, my 9-star chain effect, and Flame Burst, the damage was terrifying. Nothing in my path, not even level 10 mechanical monsters, could survive a single hit. Since I could fire one every 2 seconds, I had basically become a walking, human artillery battery. Suddenly, the ground groaned under a weight it couldn't support. A nearby ruin collapsed, and a mechanical beast the size of a small mountain slowly stood up. It was built from dark purple superalloy, standing 3 stories tall. Its limbs were like massive steel pillars, and every step it took left deep craters in the earth. 2 massive cannons were mounted on its shoulders. This was the boss of the mechanical graveyard, the Desolation Steel Colossus, Guslam. I glanced at its stats. Level 10. Strength, 148. Constitution, 480. Health, 220,000. It had a passive called Desolation Body and skills like Electromagnetic Pulse and the Ghostly Desolation Cannon. It was a beast. My own health was only 300. As a level 5 mage, I was as fragile as glass. 1 or 2 direct hits from this thing, and I'd be nothing but a red smear on the pavement. Without a perfectly coordinated team, most people would be slaughtered here. The boss looked intimidating, I'll give it that. But I didn't flinch. I focused, and the fire elements around me went wild. The temperature skyrocketed. 9 blazing fireballs condensed in front of me, each one the size of a wash basin. They had deep red outer layers and glowing blue cores, radiating enough heat to melt steel. They hovered in an arc, looking like a cluster of falling stars. In the name of flame, I whispered, "Burn everything." I swung my arm forward. The 9 fireballs shrieked through the air, pulled by an invisible force. The boss tried to throw up an energy shield, but my spells were too fast. The first fireball slammed into a joint in its torso. The explosion was blinding. The metal turned a dull cherry red instantly, and the shield flickered and shattered. Before the Colossus could even react, the second, third, and fourth fireballs hit the exact same spot. 9 consecutive hits, 9 massive explosions. Each one carried enough force to level a building. The fire behaved like a caged beast finally set free, tearing through the graveyard. The shockwaves cleared every piece of debris for 50 meters. I listened to the screeching sound of twisting metal and the roar of the flames. When the smoke cleared, the massive chest plate was gone. The internal wiring had melted into a puddle of black slag. "That's it," I muttered. I felt a bit let down. The destruction was massive, but for me, it was just one cast. One cast that cost 2 mana points and had a 2-second cooldown. Yet, the damage was easily tier 2, maybe even tier 3 level. It was a total slaughter. I realized then that I didn't need to waste time learning high-level spells with long cooldowns. I just needed to keep stacking my multipliers. If I cast a basic spell enough times, it would eventually become stronger than a forbidden curse. Notifications started flooding my vision. I had killed the level 10 boss. I gained 5,000 experience points and 10 skill experience. I picked up 5 stacks of metal materials, a steel mechanical heart, and a book called Guzlam's Growth Notes. There were also 3 pieces of unidentified gear. Another chime rang out. I had achieved the first clear of the mechanical graveyard. The rewards were 10 attribute pages and a book of knowledge. My vision blurred for a second as my level jumped straight to level 7. My stats increased by 10 points across the board, and I had another 10 free attribute points to spend. Since I was soloing, I didn't have to share a single scrap of experience with anyone else. I leveled up fast. Between the boss kill and the experience bonus for fighting higher-level enemies, I had reached level 7 in record time. For any other student, this would have taken days of grueling teamwork. For me, with the infinite augmentation system, it was as easy as breathing. But levels weren't my priority. I didn't care about the numbers as much as I cared about the multipliers. I needed to stack my casts. Asterisk boom, 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 asterisk. Even though the boss was dead, I didn't stop. Every 2 seconds, I launched another fireball into the ruins, carving massive craters into the scrap metal. I checked my loot. The attribute pages and the book of knowledge were great. More stats meant more raw power. The rest of the drops were useless to me, just junk I could sell later for a bit of gold. I pulled up my status panel to see where I stood. I was a level 7 mage. My strength, agility, and physique had all jumped to 80. My spirit, however, was at 160. I dumped every single attribute point I gained from leveling and the bonus pages straight into spirit. My mana pool sat at 1,600. My fireball was now level 2. To level it again, I needed 4 skill points, so I decided to save what I had for now. In this world, skills had a clear progression. You could level them up to increase their base damage, but the form of the spell stayed the same. A level 100 fireball was still just a fireball. Then there was advancement. That was the real goal for most mages. A tier 1 fireball could evolve into a tier 2 burst, then a tier 3 flame feather, and eventually a tier 4 falling meteor. Advancing a skill meant it shared the same slot, allowing a powerful mage to master every form of a spell from tier 1 to tier 9. It sounded perfect, but the cost was staggering. You needed deep knowledge, rare skill scrolls, and massive financial backing. Only families like the Lins had the wealth to buy a complete set of advancement books for their heirs. I looked at my system and realized I was bypassing that entire struggle. My multipliers did the same thing as advancement, but better. A 10-fold 9-star chain, or a 100-fold flame burst, felt like high-tier magic, yet I was using a basic tier 1 spell. Other mages were restricted by their rank. A tier 1 mage could only learn tier 1 spells. But here I was, still in the novice stage, already wielding the power of a tier 3 spell. And I wasn't done. What happened when I hit 1,000-fold? 1,000,000-fold? A single fireball would eventually carry the weight of a forbidden curse. I felt a surge of heat in my chest. If I could fire a forbidden curse every 2 seconds, would Lin Yufan still dare to look down on me? Would the Lin family still try to keep Mushua away? They'd be begging me to take her. People talk about 30 years to settle a grudge. I didn't have 30 years. I didn't even need 30 days. At this rate, 3 days would be enough. Boom. Another hundredfold fireball rocked the graveyard. A notification flickered in front of my eyes. Asterisk dungeon cleared. Would you like to teleport out? Asterisk. No, I whispered. The dungeon was a closed space. I was alone here. No one could see what I was doing or how fast I was growing. This was the perfect place to farm my multipliers. Besides, I hadn't finished my real objective for choosing the mechanical graveyard. Deep beneath the scrap piles sat a hidden, fully functional mechanical factory. It was the source of every mechanical hound and monster in this zone. Most players killed the boss and left because destroying the factory provided almost no rewards. It was a waste of time. But I remembered a story from my studies. A team once stayed here for a month, killing over 10,000 mechanical monsters. They unlocked a hidden title, Mechanical Hunter. For most, the title was garbage. It slightly increased affinity with machinery and reduced skill cooldowns by exactly 1 second. For a mage whose spells took minutes or hours to cool down, 1 second was a joke. But for me, my cooldown was only 2 seconds. Reducing that by half was a miracle. It would double my casting speed. It would double my growth. I hiked toward the dark tunnel entrance leading underground. Dozens of glowing red eyes peered out from the shadows. A pack of mechanical hounds lunged at me, snarling through metal teeth. I raised my hand and sent a fireball screaming into the tunnel, vaporizing the entire pack instantly. I wasn't going to destroy the factory. I was going to stand right here and wait. I needed 10,000 kills, and I wasn't leaving until I got them. I watched as wave after wave of mechanical monsters crawled out of the dark tunnel, only to be instantly swallowed by the sea of fire I had created. Was this a bug in the system? Probably. Did I care? Not at all. I just kept farming. I had no intention of exploring the underground factory. This dungeon had been open for hundreds of years. Every inch of it had been mapped out by others long ago. There were no secrets left to find, only monsters to kill. My mana was running low. I pulled a spirit potion from my bag and downed it in one go. I could feel my energy slowly trickling back. Half an hour later, I decided to test my limits. I unleashed 9 massive fireballs, each the size of a wagon wheel. The impact was deafening. 9 deep, crimson craters scarred the earth, followed by a roar that shook the very foundation of the dungeon. Columns of magma erupted from the ground, reaching toward the ceiling. They weren't just pillars of flame. They twisted and surged, morphing into 9 giant fire dragons. Their heads were raised high, their claws sharp and terrifying. The heat was intense enough to melt solid steel. The sky turned the color of molten gold. Sparks fell like burning rain, exploding into tiny fires wherever they touched the ground. Within seconds, everything for hundreds of meters was transformed into a literal hellscape. The temperature spiked to over 500 degrees. This was the power of a 1,000-fold multiplier. I called it the Magma Dragon Pillars. Even I was stunned by the destruction. If I weren't inside a dungeon, this single attack would have leveled the entire city plaza and the surrounding business districts. I thought about Xiao Hong, the principal of my high school. He had spent his entire life reaching the 4th rank as a mage. Rumor had it the strongest person in Shanghai City was the city lord, a 5th-rank powerhouse. In a city of millions, you could count the 5th-rank experts on one hand. I used to look up to those people like they were gods. Now, they didn't seem so untouchable anymore. But I forced myself to stay calm. I knew my weakness. My attack power was insane. I was firing off 4th-rank spells every 2 seconds, but I was still a glass cannon. My level wasn't even 10 yet. To a real expert, I was still just a fly. One slap, and I'd be dead. I needed to keep a low profile. If anyone found out my secret, I'd be hunted down or locked in a lab. Until I was strong enough to protect myself, I had to stay in the shadows. Shanghai City was just a small base in the Nanjiang province. It was protected by steel walls and magic arrays, a tiny safe haven in a world overrun by monsters. Beyond the walls lay the wilderness, a place where humans were no longer the masters. Shanghai only had 3 million people. It was nothing compared to the capital, Nanjiang City, which housed over 100 million people and countless high-level experts. I needed to be humble, at least until I was truly invincible. Once I hit level 10, I would unlock a new skill slot. I decided then that my next skill had to be for survival. I raised my hand and fired a simple, tiny fireball. I had turned off all the multipliers and special effects. If I kept using the magma dragon pillars, I'd collapse the entire dungeon and attract way too much attention. I went back to the grind. I had two goals: 10,000 kills for the Mechanical Hunter title and pushing my multiplier even higher. A notification pinged in my ear. I had killed another level 10 Mechanical Hound. 300 experience points. 1 skill point. Then, a golden light washed over me. I had reached level 10. My attributes increased, and that new skill slot finally clicked open. But then another notification popped up. I had hit the level cap for the Mechanical Graveyard. I wouldn't gain any more experience here. I checked my stats. My spirit was at 220, double my other attributes. My mana pool had expanded significantly. It was hard to believe I had reached level 10 in less than a day. Usually, it took weeks of grueling work for a normal person to get this far. But my level didn't reflect my true combat power. As I cast one more fireball, the system chimed again. Fireball multiplier has reached 10,000x. New effect unlocked. Heaven-burning meteor. I felt a surge of heat that made the previous spells feel like candles. I raised my hand, and the crimson glow in my palm didn't just burn, it shattered. A pillar of flame shot straight into the sky, warping the very air. The sky above me seemed to tear open. Huge rifts appeared, and from those cracks, fire poured out. These weren't just rocks. They were massive chunks of volcanic rock wrapped in white-hot flames. Each one was over 1,000 degrees. The whistling sound of them cutting through the air was deafening. Thousands of meteors wove a web of fire that covered the entire horizon. It wasn't a shower anymore. It was a localized apocalypse. Every single meteor carried enough power to burn the seas and melt the mountains. The air screamed under the intense heat, dying a slow death as the light itself warped and twisted out of shape. When the flaming meteors finally struck the ground, the world exploded. Roar after roar shook the earth, sending pillars of crimson light shooting into the sky. The ground was instantly riddled with molten craters, and glowing lava began to spill everywhere, dissolving metal, ruins, and even the dirt into nothingness. Every inch of the land was consumed by the heaven-burning meteor. As far as I could see, there was only a sea of red fire. This rain of fire showed no mercy. It was a localized apocalypse, determined to turn everything into ash. I stood in the middle of the inferno, the only figure left standing in a world of destruction. Even I was stunned by the sheer terror of this skill. The Mechanical Graveyard had become a world of fire. Nothing but fire. Then, I heard a sharp crack. It was the sound of space itself tearing. The power was so immense that the dungeon world couldn't contain it. I realized that if I cast this spell one more time, the entire dungeon might actually collapse. If I destroyed the dungeon forever, things would get very complicated with the authorities. I immediately shut off the multipliers and the special effects. For the next 3 days, I went back to basics, casting simple, single fireballs one after another to grind my proficiency. A notification finally chimed. I had killed 10,000 mechanical monsters. I had earned a new achievement, Machine Hunter. It was a white tier title that slightly increased my mechanical affinity and, more importantly, reduced all skill cooldowns by 1 second. The rules were simple. I had to equip it and display it publicly for the effect to work. There was no limit to how many achievements I could earn, but I could only wear 9 at a time. I felt a surge of joy. Finally, I equipped the title, and the words Machine Hunter appeared above my head in a metallic, high-tech font, glowing with a soft white light. Achievements were ranked like everything else: white, green, blue, purple, gold, and rainbow. Even though this was just a basic white title, it gave me exactly what I needed. My fireball originally had a 2-second cooldown. Now, I could fire them every second. I opened my system panel. My fireball multiplier had reached 49,800x. I had unlocked 4 major effects: 9-star continuous beads, flame burst impact, flame jade dragon pillar, and the heaven-burning meteor. I only needed about 50,000 more casts to reach the 100,000x milestone and unlock the next tier of power. With the cooldown reduction, The process would be twice as fast. However, I decided it was time to leave. I was capped at level 10, and the dungeon space was too fragile for my growing power. Plus, I was out of mana potions. I couldn't sustain a fireball every second without them. Most importantly, now that I was level 10, I could learn new skills. My attack power was godlike, but my defense was non-existent. I was a glass cannon, and that was a dangerous way to live. I hid my title and stepped through the exit portal. I emerged back at the Novice Dungeon Plaza. The crowd of students had thinned out significantly. Most had already leveled up and moved on to higher-tier dungeons or the leveling zones outside the base city. The Novice dungeons were just a stepping stone. The experience was low, and the loot drops were pathetic. After killing over 10,000 monsters, I only had about 200 pieces of metal materials and basic gear. I headed to a nearby buyback shop to clear out my inventory. The shop owner was a shrewd old man with squinty eyes and a permanent, fake smile. He looked over my haul and nodded. A total of 1,569 gold coins. Let's call it an even 1,600. I frowned. 1,600 gold? That was more than my parents' total savings. But for a professional, it wasn't even enough to buy a decent skill scroll. My shop has a great reputation, the old man said, seeing my expression. Your items are mostly white tier. Only a dozen are green. Anywhere else, you wouldn't even get 1,500. Besides, I didn't even charge you an appraisal fee. He was right about that. Gear dropped from monsters usually came in an unidentified state. You needed an appraiser to unlock their stats before you could even wear them. It was one of the most lucrative professions out there. Fine. 1,600 it is, I said. I knew the market. Novice dungeon loot just wasn't worth much. As I was finishing the deal, a group of 5 young people walked in, 4 guys and a girl. They looked about my age, probably students from another school. I was about to leave when their conversation caught my ear. Boss, do you buy skill scrolls? The leader, a guy named Pan Yunchi, asked. Usually, people sold scrolls at the Heavenly Book Pavilion for better prices. Selling to a buyback shop was a sign of desperation. Let me see, the old man said. Pan Yunchi handed over a scroll etched with faint green patterns. I could feel a slight breeze emanating from it. A common tier 1 haste spell, the owner said, barely looking at it. 950 gold. 950? Are you kidding? Pan Yunchi snapped, slamming his hand on the counter. You can't find a skill scroll on the market for less than 1,000. Most go for 2 or 3,000. Young man, there's a difference between a buyback price and a retail price, the old man replied calmly. My offer is fair. Can't you go a bit higher? How about 1,200? The girl in the group, Kong Jianing, pleaded. If it's too low, we might as well just go to the Heavenly Book Pavilion. The old man chuckled. Little girl, this scroll dropped in a novice dungeon, didn't it? Nothing truly great comes out of those places. And besides, this scroll has been appraised before, the shop owner said, his eyes narrowing with a sharp, calculating glint. You've already been to the Heavenly Book Pavilion. You know exactly what it does. They probably offered you 900 gold, didn't they? I'll give you 950. Consider the extra 50 a fee for your trouble of walking over here. Pan Yunchi and his friends looked at each other in shock. They felt exposed. The old man had read them like an open book. Every word he said was exactly right. What do we do? One of them whispered. Selling it for less than 1,000 feels like a total scam. Maybe we should keep it. Kong Jianing suggested, looking at the leader. Pan Yunchi, you're an assassin. Haste is perfect for you. I'm not learning that trash, Pan Yunchi snapped. It's a waste of a skill slot. Actually, 950 isn't that bad, another boy chimed in. We can trade that for a few pieces of white tier gear. If we're going to level up in the wilderness, we need real equipment. It's way more dangerous out there than in the novice dungeons. I watched them huddle together, whispering frantically. My interest was piqued. In the eyes of these students, the skill was garbage. But for me, garbage was often gold in disguise. Still, I stayed quiet. This was the shop owner's territory, and it was bad form to jump in on a deal. The owner noticed me staring. Interested? Don't be. This skill is a dead end. Learning it takes up a slot that you could use for something actually useful. It's like tying your own hands. Most people wouldn't take it even if it were free. Then why buy it at all? I asked. For research. Or materials, he explained. A blank Tier 1 scroll is worth at least 1,000 gold. But once a trash skill is etched onto it, the value actually drops. It's a failed product. I nodded slowly. I remembered the fireball scroll I bought earlier. It had been made by a scroll master. That meant skills didn't just come from monster drops. People could actually create them. Is it hard to make skill books? I asked. My education had focused on combat classes, not specialized professions like scroll masters. If I could learn to make my own, I wouldn't be at the mercy of the market. Hard? It's nearly impossible, the owner laughed. He was an appraiser himself, so I trusted his word. Scroll masters are the elite of the elite. You have to be epic tier just to start. They can create, copy, improve, and even invent brand new skills. Every major power treats them like royalty. I was stunned. I thought back to the fireball scroll I possessed. Even if it was a failure, it had been evaluated by a level 5 appraiser. The collector's value was sky high. If I could find the person who made it, that connection alone would be worth a fortune. The owner continued, clearly enjoying the chance to show off his knowledge. You know how skill progression works, right? Collecting a full set of matching skills is a nightmare. If you're unlucky and miss that one crucial book, your skills might never evolve. That's where scroll masters come in. They fill the gaps. He looked at me with newfound respect. I was just a student who had recently awakened, yet I had walked in here with hundreds of materials from the machine graveyard. That didn't happen by accident. To him, I was either incredibly strong or incredibly well-connected. Either way, he wanted to stay on my good side. Boss, how about 1,000 gold? Pan Yunchi called out, stepping back to the counter. We already spent 100 gold on the appraisal fee at the pavilion. We're losing money here. 1,000 is fine. The owner agreed easily. But I keep the appraisal certificate. Pan Yunchi nodded, handed over the scroll and a stamped document from the Heavenly Book Pavilion, took his gold, and led his group out of the shop. The owner turned to me and slid the certificate across the counter. Read it for yourself. The document was official. It listed the skill, Haste, Tier 1. Origin, Shadow Hunter Valley. Description, feel the wind element to gain a very slight movement speed boost. Duration, 3 seconds. Cooldown, 8 seconds. Cost, 5 mana. The evaluation was brutal. 1 star. It said the boost was negligible and the duration was too short to be useful in real combat. It was labeled bottom tier among haste spells, with an estimated value between 800 and 1,200 gold. It was definitely trash. That's why Pan Yunchi sold it. Still want it? The owner asked, smiling. How much? I replied after a moment. The skill was weak, but I saw something they didn't. The cooldown was only 8 seconds. Most high-level haste spells had massive boosts, but took minutes to recharge. With my Mechanical Hunter title, that 8-second cooldown dropped to 7. I already had the insane power of my 10,000 times magnified fireball. I didn't need more damage, I needed utility. I needed to be able to move. 1,000 gold, the owner said. Consider it a favor between friends. Just promise me that when you have more loot to sell, you'll come to me first. I'll give you the best prices. Deal, I said. It was a fair price, and having a reliable contact for my loot was worth more than a few gold coins. I handed over the money and took the scroll. It was time to see what my talent could do with a trash utility skill. I didn't see any problem with the owner's offer. Like he said, more friends meant more paths. Besides, I needed a reliable channel to sell the loot I'd be gathering in the future. Keep an eye out for similar skill books for me, I said, adding a small request of my own. No problem, the owner nodded. Any specific requirements? Short cooldowns, I replied instantly, and low mana consumption, specifically for mage-type skills. Got it. Let's add each other. I pulled out my smart bracelet and swapped contact info. That was when I noticed a flood of unread messages. Signals were blocked inside dungeon instances and most wilderness areas. You only got a full signal once you were back within the safety of the base city. I scrolled through them one by one. The first few were from Zhao Biao. Jiang Yuan, did you find a team yet? Haha, we cleared the dungeon. It was a bit scary though. Be careful when you go in. It's definitely not zero danger. I almost died a few times. Where are you? Still in there? The messages continued over the next few days. I hit level 3. Got 2 pieces of gear. My teammates are great. Haha, I'm finally level 5. The team wants to head outside the city to grind. The monsters in the dungeon give too little XP. Zhongyuan, why aren't you replying? You didn't run into trouble, did you? Let me know when you're out. Brother, don't die on me. If I'd known, we would have just teamed up. It looked like Zhao Biao joining Luo Xing's team was a smart move. He'd hit level 5 and moved to the city outskirts. He had officially survived the novice phase and become a real professional. I quickly shot him a message telling him I was fine and had just stayed in the dungeon a few extra days. He didn't reply immediately. He was likely out in a hunting zone without a signal. The rest of the messages, dozens of them, were from Lin Muxue. She started with a long apology for leaving without saying goodbye. She explained that because of her unique class, she had to follow her family's arrangements. Her elders had taken her from Shanghai City to Nanjia City, the provincial capital. Through family connections, she had been taken in as a student by a powerful mentor at Nanjia Academy and began receiving the Blue Phoenix inheritance. A day ago, she had reached level 10 under the protection of a guardian. She had already mastered 2 powerful skills related to her inheritance. Her final messages asked how I was doing and reminded me of our promise to do well in the federal exams so we could attend Nanjia Academy together. I sighed, feeling the weight of the gap between us. Was this the advantage of an epic tier class? Nanjia City wasn't just a capital, it was the largest city in the Southern Federation. Out of tens of thousands of universities, Nanjia Academy was one of the elite Big 5. Only the absolute top geniuses could get in. In Shanghai City, you could count the number of students who made it there each year on 2 hands. Lin Muxue was already a student of a mentor there. She had essentially secured her spot. She had truly become a phoenix soaring in the sky, suddenly out of reach. To anyone else, a common mage like me had no chance. Even if I leveled up, her growth speed would always be faster. If I didn't have my system, I probably would have felt inferior. I might have never been able to catch up to her in a lifetime. But the reality was different. My true strength could crush Lin Muxue's current power several times over. I replied to her, telling her I had also hit level 10. I promised her I'd shine in the federal exams and meet her at Nanjia Academy. That school had the resources and high-tier skills I needed to grow. Besides, Shanghai City was just a small, second-tier base city. I needed to leave to see the wider world. My bracelet chimed immediately. She was online. You really hit level 10 already? That's so fast. How did you do it? I'm only level 12, and that's with Zhou Yi helping me. It's so slow now. Does that mean you can learn your second skill? Skills are everything, Jiang Yuan. You have to be careful. Don't be greedy for cheap, messy skills just to save money. A few more messages popped up before I could type. Actually, I have a good relationship with Sister Junyao. If you run into trouble, ask her for help. If you see a skill you like at the Heavenly Book Pavilion, just tell her. Put it on my tab. Think of it as a loan, you can pay me back later. I felt a sudden warmth in my chest. I had been an orphan for 18 years. Being remembered and cared for like this felt good. She must have talked to Si Junyao and heard about me buying that trash fireball book. She was worried about me, but she phrased it as a loan to protect my pride. We chatted for a while, sharing our experiences and combat tips, until she had to go back to training. I looked at the green scroll in my hand. I hadn't learned it yet. While the shop owner was looking for books for me, that was a game of luck. The Heavenly Book Pavilion controlled 90% of the market. If anyone had what I needed, it was them. Even the people who sold this haste scroll had gone to the pavilion first before settling for the pawn shop. If only I could get that mysterious scroll artist to help me. I started walking toward the tallest building on the commercial street. From what the shop owner told me, a scroll artist was at least an epic tier profession. They didn't just copy scrolls like a basic scribe. They could replicate a scroll perfectly, create new ones from blueprints, or even improve existing ones. I needed an upgrade, and the Heavenly Book Pavilion was the only place to get it. Being a scroll artist was about more than just copying. The best ones were creators. They used their own knowledge and experience to craft brand new skill scrolls from scratch, bringing things into existence that had never been seen before. When I entered the Heavenly Book Pavilion, I didn't head for the front desk. I took a chance and used the contact information Lin Muxue had given me to reach out to Si Junyao. I wasn't holding my breath. Even if she was close with Muxue, she was the head of the entire pavilion. She was powerful, busy, and probably didn't have time for a nobody like me. To my surprise, a staff member approached me a few minutes later and led me to the top floor. The elevator doors opened to a world of pure luxury. A crystal chandelier hung from a gilded dome, casting shimmering light over deep red carpets and sandalwood furniture. The walls were inlaid with jade, and the shelves were packed with ancient porcelain and famous calligraphy. Even the floor was made of emerald-grade stone. As I pushed open the doors to the main office, a light breeze caught the hem of a robe. Behind a heavy desk stood Si Junyao. She wore a moon-white qipao with subtle patterns, her long hair pinned up with a jade hairpin. A few loose strands brushed against her face, smelling faintly of ink. She looked elegant, calm, and completely in control. She was leaning over a sheet of gold-flecked paper, holding a brush with practiced ease. The sunlight through the window caught her wrist, making her skin look even whiter than the paper. The luxury of the room felt loud, but the moment she looked up, everything else seemed to fade into a quiet, beautiful painting. I caught my breath, afraid to move and break the moment. Suddenly, the image of that mysterious scroll artist flashed in my mind. The profile, the grace, it all overlapped perfectly with the woman standing in front of me. "You're here." Si Junyao set the brush down. Her voice was clear and calm, but there was a sharp, distant edge to it. She hadn't refused my visit, but I knew it wasn't because she cared about me. She was doing this for Mushua. "Miss Si Junyao, sorry for the intrusion," I said. I had a theory, but I kept it to myself for now. "It's fine," she replied. "I promised Mushua I'd help you. She's been taken in as a student by a mentor at Nanjiang Academy, someone from my own family, actually. Which skill book did you have your eye on? I'll have someone bring it to you immediately." Her aura was overwhelming. She was beautiful, but she was also a shark. Even her casual talk felt like a warning. She was making it clear that we were in different worlds. She was helping me because of Mushua, and she was only going to do it once. "I actually bought a scroll here before," I said, refusing to let her pressure me. "I want to know who the scroll artist was that created it." Si Junyao's eyes sharpened. She looked at me with sudden suspicion. Scroll artists were incredibly rare. Most people in a place like Shanghai City didn't even know they existed. They just thought they were some kind of hobbyist painter. That was why that fireball scroll had sat on the shelf for so long at 80,000 gold. No one understood what it really was. Then, it clicked for her. She remembered that failed fireball scroll. I was the kid who bought it. That scroll was her work. It was her very first creation. Even if it was technically a failure, it meant something to her. "I want to ask that person for a favor," I continued. "I want to improve a skill scroll. I wasn't going to settle for one free book. If I was using Mushua's favor, I was going to make it count." Si Junyao narrowed her eyes. She stared at me for a long time, and I felt a strange shiver. It felt like she was looking right through me. She was definitely using some kind of high-level inspection skill. "You actually learned my fireball skill?" she asked, her voice full of disbelief. She wasn't just a scroll artist. She was a master appraiser. She could see my character sheet as clear as day. And there, sitting in my skill column, was that lone, worthless fireball. "It was your fireball?" I asked. I didn't act surprised. It made sense now. She was young, yet she ran this place. Her talent as a scroll artist explained everything. It explained why a professional appraiser had given that book such a high price tag. "Yes," she said softly. "I'm the one you're looking for." "Then the skill I learned is yours," I nodded. Si Junyao's expression was a mess of emotions. She looked shocked, frustrated, and weirdly relieved all at once. I don't think she ever expected someone to actually learn that skill. She probably thought it would just be kept as a collector's item. Knowing it was now part of some kid's permanent stats seemed to bother her. "Well," she sighed, "you're full of surprises. But I'm curious. How did you get to level 10 in just a few days using a skill like that?" She was looking at my level. With our power gap, my stats were an open book to her. Luckily, the system was invisible. Not even a god-tier inspection skill could find that. "Do I have to answer that?" I asked. I knew it looked suspicious. Mushua was level 10 because she was an epic-tier genius with a massive family backing her. I was a common mage with a trash skill and 0 resources. Getting to level 10 this fast shouldn't have been possible. She was probably wondering if that weak fireball was actually stronger than it looked. She had no idea that if I hadn't been capped by the novice dungeon, I'd probably be level 20 by now. Suit yourself, she said, not pushing it. So, what do you want to improve? Her tone had shifted. It was still professional, but the cold distance was gone. It's a haste scroll, I said, pulling out the green paper. I want to reduce the cooldown and the mana cost. Is that possible? Si Junyao took the scroll and looked at it. Her face immediately twisted into an expression of pure disgust. Where did you buy this? This isn't even trash, it's worse. If you want a second skill, I have dozens of top-tier grade 1 scrolls in this building that are 100 times better than this. I have items in my private collection that aren't even for sale to the public, Si Junyao said, her eyes fixed on me. I can open those up for you. There's bound to be something that fits. After all, I promised Mushua I'd take care of you. She looked at me like I was a puzzle she couldn't solve. I could tell she thought I was handsome and smart, but my choices were making me look like a complete idiot in her eyes. This was a massive favor from the head of the Heavenly Book Pavilion, and I was wasting it on a piece of trash. To her, this wasn't just my reputation on the line, it was hers. No need, I said, shaking my head. I just want to improve this haste scroll. Are you actually stupid? She snapped. She gripped the green scroll so hard I thought she might rip it to shreds right then and there. If it's not possible, then forget it, I said, reaching out to take it back. She pulled it away. Do you have any idea what it costs to hire a scroll master? A single session starts at 1,000,000 gold coins. 1,000,000. That's enough to buy 1,000 copies of this garbage haste skill. I froze. That expensive? I knew scroll masters were high status, but that price was insane. It was literally a king's ransom. Of course, she said, her chin tilting up with a flash of pride. And that's for a common master. If I do it personally, I turn down 10 million gold contracts every day. The line of people begging me for scrolls stretches from Shanghai City to Nanjiang. She wasn't bragging about being a rich socialite or a beauty on some goddess list. This was her true pride. She was a master of her craft. Then never mind, I said, shaking my head. I couldn't let Mushua owe her a debt that massive. It wasn't fair to her. Glad you finally came to your senses, Si Junyao sighed. I'll have someone take you to the treasury. Pick any top-tier scroll you want. We have plenty of wind element skills that are actually useful. Do any of them have a cooldown under 10 seconds? I asked. She stared at me. No. The better the skill, the longer the cooldown usually is. But the power and efficiency make them worth it. We have a wind painting skill in the vault. It's grade 1, but it's the best of the best. The cooldown is 3 minutes, but it gives you 2.5 minutes of high-speed flight, dodge chance, and damage immunity. It's 100 times better than this. I'll pass, I said. Wind painting sounded amazing to anyone else. But to me, a haste skill with an 8-second cooldown was the real treasure. You are as stubborn as a mule, she yelled. I don't know what Mushua sees in you. Fine. Are you absolutely sure you want to waste her favor on this? No, I said, reaching for the scroll again. The price is too high. I'm not doing it. I had assumed a favor meant a free skill worth maybe 10,000 gold. Millions? That was a different world. What are you doing now? She asked, her brow furrowing. I'm leaving. Just give me the scroll back. Let's pretend I never came here today. She unrolled the green paper again, casting another inspection spell on it. She searched every line, trying to find some hidden secret I was seeing that she wasn't. She found nothing. Are you really going to make this your second permanent skill? She asked. I didn't answer, but my face gave it away. Fine, she sighed. If you're going to be this difficult, I'll do it. Improving a grade 1 scroll is easy for me, so the cost isn't actually that high. Since you don't want Mushua to owe me, how about this? You owe me the favor instead. I thought about it for a long time. The result was the same, but the meaning was different. I wasn't putting a burden on Mushua anymore. Deal, I said. As long as it's within my power to repay. Then you better get strong fast, she said, her fingers tracing the green patterns on the paper. Otherwise, you'll never be able to pay me back. Now, what exactly do you want changed? Shorten the cooldown as much as possible, I said. Then lower the mana cost. She paused. That is the strangest request I've ever heard. What about the speed boost? Even with a low cooldown, haste is useless if you don't actually move faster. Doesn't matter, I told her. With my talent, Even the smallest base boost would become terrifying once it was multiplied 1,000 times. I didn't need her to waste energy on the speed stats. Go wait in the lounge, she commanded. I wanted to watch her work, but she clearly wasn't going to show me her secrets. I walked out and waited. I expected it to take hours, but in less than 30 minutes, a staff member walked in and handed me a brand new scroll. Si Junyao didn't come back. Maybe she was too disappointed in me to say goodbye. I looked down at the new skill description. It said, "Summon the wind as your companion, move as light as a swallow." The new description was simple. Asterisk gain a small movement speed boost. Duration, 3 seconds. Cooldown, 3 seconds. Mana cost, 3 points. Asterisk. Si Junyao had done exactly what I asked. She had slashed the cooldown from 8 seconds down to 3 and dropped the mana cost by 2 points. Even though I hadn't asked her to improve the actual effect, the speed boost felt slightly stronger too. I wasn't sure if she did that on purpose or if it was just a side effect of her skill, but to me, it was perfect. With my mechanical hunter talent, that 3-second cooldown would drop to just 2 seconds. I now owed her a massive favor, but looking at the scroll, I knew it was worth it. I didn't hesitate. I crushed the scroll, and a burst of clear light flowed into my body. A new icon appeared in my skill bar, Gale Steps. Back in her office, Si Junyao watched me through the surveillance monitor. She had been suspicious. She thought I was just playing games or using a weird request to get her attention, like so many other guys had tried before. She even doubted if I had really created that fireball scroll myself. Who would ruin their own future by learning such a weak utility spell? But when she saw me learn it without a second thought, she just sighed and turned off the screen. To her, I was just a strange kid she'd never see again. She didn't actually expect me to repay the favor. Without Mushiwa, someone like me would never even be in her world. I walked out of the heavenly book pavilion, unaware of her pity. I had no intention of breaking my word. People thought I was just a level 10 commoner, but my actual combat power was terrifying. If she needed a level 100 boss dead, all she had to do was give me the coordinates. Plus, her talent as a scroll master was too valuable to lose. Finding trash skills with low cooldowns was actually harder than finding rare ones. I needed her. It was time to level up. I wanted to hit level 30 as fast as possible. I stopped at a nearby shop and spent every cent of my savings on mana potions. I didn't buy armor or weapons. It wasn't because I was broke, it was because I knew I'd outgrow them in days. Once I hit level 30 and completed my class advancement, Tier 1 gear would be useless anyway. Potions were a better investment. I had Fireball for offense and Gale Steps for survival. I was ready. I left the commercial district and headed for the south gate. As I walked, I cast Gale Steps every 2 seconds. A light breeze swirled around my feet, and my pace quickened significantly. I started planning my next moves. In this world, every 30 levels, you undergo a class advancement. You can use a transition voucher or complete a specific quest to evolve. A common mage could become an elite fire mage or an elementalist. If you kept succeeding, even a common class could eventually reach epic or legendary status. Advancement was crucial because of rank suppression. A level 30 mage who had completed their first advancement could easily crush 5 level 30 mages who hadn't. The stats and the hidden pressure of a higher rank made it a one-sided slaughter. For me, the quest wouldn't be the hard part. The hard part was choosing the right path. Common mages are weak, but they are flexible. I could become a fire mage to boost my fireball, but then I'd be locked into one element. I could become an elementalist to use everything, but the power might be spread too thin. I needed something that fit my system. I remembered reading about rare classes that focused on reducing cooldowns or removing chant times entirely. Instant casting was my dream. But to get there, I needed a specific transition voucher. I narrowed my goals down to 3 steps. First, hit level 30. That was the easy part. Second, grind my skill multipliers. I wanted to push Gale Steps to a 10,000x boost and Fireball to 100,000x to unlock its ultimate special effect. I could do that while leveling. Third, find the perfect advanced class and complete a flawless transition. With my plan set, I stepped through the city gates and looked out at the wild lands. It was time to show this world what a common mage could really do. The most critical part of my preparation was figuring out which class to transition into and how to get the necessary voucher. This required a massive amount of knowledge and reliable information channels. I knew I had to visit the school's library again to study the specific traits of every advanced class. Beyond that, I needed to visit the commercial street. A guy there named Old by sold secret intelligence, though his info came with a steep price tag. I figured if I could handle those two things, my advancement would be smooth sailing. I reached the ruins of Tianhai City. Once I stepped past the southern gates, I was officially in the wilderness. This wasn't human territory anymore. It was a paradise for monsters. The Federation categorized these areas as low, medium, or high-level zones, followed by danger zones and forbidden lands. Danger zones were crawling with high-level beasts and powerful bosses that could kill even top-tier professionals. As for forbidden lands, the name said it all. Entering one was a death sentence. And above those sat the abyss, a place of pure nightmare. The area surrounding Shanghai City was a low-level zone, often called the leveling zone. Every so often, the city sent out military squads and guild members to clear out high-level mutants and demonized creatures. This kept the city safe from monster tides and gave low-level players like me a buffer zone to grow. If students walked out the gate and immediately faced world-ending threats, nobody would ever leave the city. However, low-level didn't mean safe. The monsters here were far more numerous and aggressive than anything in the novice dungeons. The zones were marked from level 1 to level 60, with signs posted every 10 levels to warn people not to wander too far. But monsters don't care about human signs. They don't just sit still like dungeon mobs. They roam. High-level monsters frequently wandered into low-level areas to hunt, and entire packs would migrate to claim new territory. These drifters were the leading cause of death for professionals. Between roaming bosses and the constant threat of players killing each other over loot in these lawless lands, the wilderness was a bloody place. I didn't slow down. I accelerated. Wind elements surged around me as I transformed into a blur, racing toward the deeper, leveling zones. I had cast gale steps over 100 times now, unlocking the 10x and 100x special effects. The first, flowing wind shadow, wrapped my body in wind, making me a flickering image that was nearly impossible to track while boosting my speed and evasion. The second, sky-shattering blade, let me fire a massive blade of compressed wind that tore through anything in its path while doubling my movement speed again. I was moving at 10 meters per step, practically gliding above the ground. I zipped through the level 10 and level 20 zones without stopping. Eventually, I slowed down at a major crossroads marked by a massive signpost. To the south lay the silent forest for levels 15 to 30, then the Tianhai City ruins for levels 30 to 90, and finally the ancient battlefield for levels 90 to 150. Beyond that was the Thousand Island Sea, a danger zone for level 100 and up. To the east were cliffs and peaks ranging from level 10 to 60. To the southwest were the docks and mines, but those were restricted military zones controlled by the big guilds. I stared at the map for a moment and chose the Tianhai City ruins. The eastern zones capped out at level 60, which was too low for my needs. The ruins, despite the massive level jump, were perfect. With my current combat power, I wasn't even afraid of a level 90 boss. Tianhai City used to be a crown jewel of the Federation, a massive port city with over 7 million residents. It fell 500 years ago during a great war. Traders from within Shanghai City had conspired with cultists to summon an avatar of an abyssal evil god. The sky bled as the Abyss Legion invaded. Although the Federation eventually pushed them back and sealed the rift, the city was left in ruins. The government decided to move the survivors to Shanghai City instead of rebuilding. I had only ever seen photos of the ruins in textbooks. It was time to see them for myself. I turned and continued south. As I disappeared into the distance, a group of people emerged from the edge of the silent forest. One of them, a sharp-eyed assassin in leather armor, squinted at my receding back. "Brother Chung, was that Zhang Yuan?" he asked. The leader, Chung, frowned. "Looked like him. How does he have the guts to head toward the forest alone?" "Probably couldn't find a team," the assassin sneered. "Serves him right for refusing to join us before. Now he's a loner. I heard Lin Mushu had dumped him, and even Zhao Biao ditched him for an elite squad. Chung smirked. So, you're saying I finally have a chance? The group around the assassin began to whisper, their eyes darting toward a noble-looking youth leading them. He was draped in expensive, high-tier gear and gripped a staff that pulsed with a faint purple light. Brother Chung, the assassin whispered, a sycophantic grin plastering his face. He's all alone. Should we go teach him a lesson? I knew this guy, Zhou Luochen. Back at school, I was always at the top of the class rankings, and Mu Shue and I were inseparable. While many students looked up to me, others hated my guts. Zhou Luochen was at the top of that list. He used to swallow his resentment because of my status as a star student, but out here in the wilderness, the rules of the school didn't apply. To them, I was just a weak, common-tier mage. Their team was stacked with elite-class professionals, all pushing level 10. Zhou Luochen himself was a rare-class mage and had already hit level 10. He's just a jumping clown, Zhou Luochen sneered, his eyes flickering with a cold, sinister light. Dealing with him personally would only get my hands dirty. My priority is heading back to the city to learn my second skill. Right. Zhang Yuan is just a joke. He's not even worth your time, Brother Chung. The others chimed in, sucking up to him. Zhou Luochen waved his team forward, but he lingered at the back for a second. He looked in the direction I had gone and made a slow, deliberate throat-cutting gesture. In the shadows nearby, a faint silhouette flickered and then vanished. As a direct descendant of the Zhou family and a rare class talent, Zhou Luochen wasn't left to wander the wild unprotected. Even though he wasn't as prized as Mu Shue was to the Lins, his family had still sent a high-level expert to watch over him from the dark. Usually, these protectors wouldn't help with leveling because the level gap would ruin the experience gain. In this world, killing high-level monsters gave you a massive bonus, but if a high-level player helped you, the penalty was brutal. Zhou Luochen watched the empty trail where I had disappeared. Without Lin Mu Shue around to shield me, he saw me as easy prey. He was obsessed with her, both for her beauty and her family's power. He blamed me for everything. He thought that once the Lin family separated us, he'd have his chance, but then Mu Shue was taken away from the city entirely. He didn't just dislike me, he wanted me dead. And the shadow following him was a Tier 3 professional. Against a Tier 1 common mage like me, it would be like stepping on an ant. Feeling satisfied that my death warrant was signed, Zhou Luochen walked away with a smirk. I didn't notice any of this. I was sprinting through the forest, my speed kicking up a gale of wind. I passed several other teams, mostly students under level 30, but I didn't stop. The silent forest was a misnomer. It wasn't silent because it was peaceful, it was silent because the predators here were masters of the ambush. They hid in the soil, the tall grass, and the trees, waiting for the slightest sound to strike. I didn't care. I moved with zero caution. As I dashed between two massive trees, a 2-meter-long camouflage mantis lunged from the canopy. Its scythe-like claws swung toward my head with lethal precision. These things are the most common killers here, famous for their sudden, high-speed strikes. The blades whistled through the air, but they hit nothing. I accelerated instantly, leaving a blur behind. By the time the mantis realized it had missed, I was already dozens of meters away. It stood there, stunned. It was supposed to be the fast one. Before it could vanish back into the leaves, a deafening whistle tore through the air. A massive, terrifying blade of wind, nearly 10 meters long, descended from the sky. The forest shook. When the dust settled, the trees were leveled, and over a dozen camouflage mantises had been reduced to a pile of shredded meat. A few moments later, a dark figure landed on a nearby branch. He looked at the carnage, his eyes wide with shock and confusion. "The scent says the kid passed through here," the shadow muttered. "But he did this? No way. He's just a level 1 newbie. It must be a coincidence." He shook his head. "Doesn't matter. I have a job to do. That kid sure can run, though." I kept moving, a phantom in the trees. System notifications began to flood my vision. Killed level 20 camouflage mantis. Gained 3,200 EXP, 5 skill EXP, haste skill book, and 1 camouflage stone. Killed level 25 camouflage mantis. Gained 4,500 EXP, 7 skill EXP. Killed level 28 camouflage mantis. Gained 5,300 EXP, 7 skill EXP, one piece of gear, and mantis meat. Level up. You are now level 11. All attributes plus 10. 10 free attribute points gained. Level up. You are now level 12. All attributes plus 10. 10 free attribute points gained. Wild monsters really were better than dungeons. As I cleared the forest, the crowds thinned out. The few professionals I saw now were high-level, fully geared teams. Out here, everyone kept their distance. Approaching another team was seen as a provocation or a prelude to a robbery. Finally, the trees gave way to a haunting sight. The Tianhai city ruins stretched out before me. It was a graveyard of a civilization. Toppled walls, shattered weapons, and rusted architectural skeletons filled my vision. Broken streets led to dried-up canals. The sea breeze whistled through the hollowed-out buildings, sounding like the collective wail of 7 million ghosts. I took a breath and stepped into the dead city. The echoes of a tragic war from hundreds of years ago seemed to linger in the air like a funeral song. Then, a roar shattered the silence. A creature covered in pitch-black scales crawled out from a side street. It looked like a giant sea lion, but with a spiraling black horn growing from its forehead. There were 3 of them. These shadow-scale beasts were huddled around a pile of human remains, tearing at the bones. Their black armor glinted under the dim sky, and their horns left deep gouges in the pavement as they moved. I narrowed my eyes, recognizing them instantly. They were hybrids, the offspring of sea monsters and abyss demons. They could spit concentrated shadow acid that melted metal and rock like it was rotting wood. Worse, they leaked a faint, eerie light from their scales that attracted other monsters. I didn't have any detection skills yet, so I had to rely on my own knowledge to judge their strength. A normal shadow scale beast was usually between level 30 and level 60. A coordinated team of rank 2 professionals could take one down. If they were mutated, their horns would turn gold, and they'd be at least level 60. Those required elite teams or rank 3 experts. Then there were the kings, the bosses. Those were over 5 meters tall with dark gold horns and levels reaching 90. The horns on these 3 were black. That meant they weren't higher than level 60. I stood perfectly still, watching them. I had interrupted their meal, and they weren't happy. They let out a furious roar as they realized a human had dared to wander into their territory. This was the perfect chance to test my 200 times amplified Void Blade. I raised my hand. The wind elements around my fingertips became violent and wild. I didn't get close. I knew these things had a long-range acid attack. I was a glass cannon mage. One hit from a monster 40 levels higher than me would end my life. I had to be careful. I flicked my wrist. A massive blade of wind tore through the air with a piercing whistle. It struck the first beast right in its flank. The black scales shattered like glass. Dark green blood sprayed everywhere as the creature let out a scream. Then, the blade sliced clean through, carving its body in half. The other 2 beasts went berserk. One of them opened its maw and spat a glob of thick shadow acid at me. I was ready. I tapped my toe against the ground, using a burst of wind to propel myself sideways. The acid hit the spot where I'd been standing, hissing as it dissolved the rock into a smoking crater. As I landed, I pushed my mana again. A second, more condensed void blade shot out. It caught the lead beast right in the neck. Its head popped off and rolled across the ruins. The last beast grew desperate. A foul-smelling dark mist erupted from its body. It coiled its legs and lunged at me, trying to crush me with its weight. My eyes went cold. I let my wind mana explode. I lunged to the side, while simultaneously conjuring a giant void blade, swinging it upward in a brutal arc. There was a loud crack. My blade sheared off the beast's spiral horn. It crashed into the ground, writhing and thrashing. I was actually surprised by its tenacity. It took one more pale green blade to finally finish the job, splitting the monster down the middle. Even with their thick hides and abyssal defense, they couldn't stand up to my amplified power. A faint white glow washed over me. Killing 3 monsters over level 40 gave me a massive experience bonus. I hit level 13 instantly. The loot was good, too. I picked up some shadow materials, 2 pieces of gear, and the 3 spiral horns. These weren't low-level dungeon scraps. These were high-level materials that would fetch a fortune back in the city. My next goal was simple: Get my haste skill to a 10,000 times amplification. I equipped my mechanical hunter, title, and downed a mana potion to recover. But as I prepared to move on, my body stiffened. A dagger engraved with blood-red runes hissed through the air, inches from my throat. If I had taken one more step forward, my neck would have been opened wide. I would have been dead. I had been keeping my haste skill active the whole time. Even though I hadn't seen the enemy, the sudden disturbance in the wind flow warned me something was wrong. My hair stood on end. Another red-rune dagger lunged for my head. I gathered the wind and threw myself backward. A figure appeared in the space I had just occupied. It was a person in a long black trench coat, face hidden, holding twin glowing daggers. That was the closest I'd come to death in 18 years. I had been getting cocky. Because of my system, I'd been steamrolling everything, and my guard had dropped. This was a wake-up call. No matter how strong I felt, I couldn't be careless in the wilderness. "Who are you? Why are you trying to kill me?" I shouted. I wasn't looking for a chat. I was buying time to condense a wind blade. There were no rules out here, but people usually killed for a reason: grudges, factions, or simple robbery. I didn't think 3 level 40 monsters were worth an assassination attempt. There had to be another motive. The figure turned into a blur of shadow and vanished from my sight. I fired my void blade, but it missed, carving a 100-meter trench into the ground instead. They were fast, extremely fast, and their camouflage was perfect. To get that close without me noticing meant they were likely a rank 2 or even rank 3 professional. This wasn't going to be an easy fight. I quickly analyzed the situation. Based on that speed, my attacker had to be a rank 3 professional, likely an assassin subclass. I doubted they were rank 4 or higher. If a rank 4 powerhouse had ambushed me, I wouldn't have been able to dodge that first strike. I would already be a corpse. Hidden in the shadows, my attacker was just as shocked as I was. He was probably wondering who the hell I really was. To him, I was supposed to be a rookie, yet my reaction speed and the destructive power of my Void Blade were on par with a rank 3 professional. He must have thought I was hiding a massive secret or carrying a legendary treasure. He wasn't wrong about my strength. He was indeed a rank 3 professional, but even at his level, he didn't dare to take my Void Blade head-on. He realized I was dangerous. In a direct fight, he wasn't sure he could win. But he was a shadow walker. His specialty wasn't dueling. It was stalking and assassination. He was a patient hunter, waiting for his prey to show a single moment of weakness. He didn't need to be lucky every time. He just needed me to mess up once. "I know you're still there," I called out into the silence. "Are you waiting for a mistake? I don't care who you are, you're going to regret this." I kept my wind shield active, swirling around me. If he stepped close, the air currents would alert me instantly. But as long as he stayed hidden, I was stuck in a defensive rut. I hated being passive. It was time to use a big move. Whoever this was, whatever their motive, I couldn't let them leave this place alive. I raised both hands again. This time, I didn't summon the pale green glow of wind. Instead, a violent, seductive crimson flame erupted from my palms. I couldn't pinpoint his exact location, but that didn't mean I was out of options. "Jade Dragon Pillar," I shouted. The ground groaned. A terrifying surge of fire elements erupted from me like a volcanic explosion, spreading outward in a wave of molten heat. In a heartbeat, the earth turned blood-red. 9 massive pillars of flame shot toward the sky, sealing off a radius of several hundred meters. I stood at the center of a literal sea of magma. The intense heat, reaching hundreds of degrees, instantly burned away the cold chill of the death threat I'd felt earlier. These pillars weren't just an attack, they were a fortress. Even a rank 3 professional would struggle to survive in this furnace. Hidden in the searing heat, the Shadow Walker was panicking. He couldn't believe his eyes. He assumed this couldn't be my own power. No rank 1 mage could cast a spell like this. He figured I must have activated a high-level, one-time use magic scroll out of desperation. He had seen scrolls like this before. The young master he served, Zhou Luochen, had rank 2 and rank 3 scrolls for protection. But the aura coming off this fire was rank 4. For the first time, he felt a desperate urge to run. His instincts as an assassin were screaming at him to flee, or he would die here. But when he tried to move, he realized he was trapped. The 9 pillars of fire had completely locked down the area. There was no way out. Sky-burning meteor, I whispered. This was the first time I went all out. I unleashed the spell with a 50,000-fold power amplification. I didn't care about the consequences or the collateral damage anymore. Nothing was more important than my life. The sky changed instantly. The dark, gloomy clouds were torn apart by an invisible force. Countless sparks of golden red light gathered in the rift, condensing into massive, flaming meteors. They were coated in celestial fire, dripping with molten lava, carrying the weight of total destruction. They roared through the air, screaming as they fell toward the ruins of Skysea City. Deep within the ruins, a team of elite professionals was busy fighting a shadow forest beast boss. When the sky lit up, they stopped in their tracks. They stared up at the falling stars, their faces pale with shock. Weapons slipped from their hands. "My God, what is that?" one of them stammered. "That fire. It has to be at least a rank 5 spell," the leader whispered, his voice trembling. "A rank 5 archmage? Is the city lord here?" "Impossible. The city lord is rank 5, but he's a melee class, not a caster." "Who is this?" "There are no rank 5 fire archmages in Shanghai City. Did someone come from another base city?" These rank 3 elites didn't even care about the boss anymore, even though its health was low. They felt the ground shake beneath their boots. The heat wave hit them like a physical blow. As more meteors appeared, the impact zone began to expand, creeping closer and closer to their position. "Something's wrong," the captain barked, his face grim. "We need to leave. Now." "But the boss is almost dead," a teammate cried out. "The boss will be there later. If we stay, we die. Everyone move." The captain didn't wait for an argument. Even though they were frustrated, they followed. They knew the difference between a payday and a funeral. They weren't the only ones. Every professional within the Skysea ruins was terrified. They didn't care who the archmage was or why he was angry. They just wanted to get out alive. Even the monsters felt it. Poisonous lizards scrambled out of rock crevices, and swarms of rotworms poured out of the ground like a black tide, all of them fleeing from the divine wrath falling from the sky. Groups of shadow-horned beasts were everywhere, frantically fleeing the area before the flames could swallow them whole. The once silent ruins had turned into a chaotic nightmare of panic. Everyone and everything was running. No one dared to stay, except for one person. At the very center of the falling star impact zone, a figure tried to escape. He realized with a hollow sense of despair that the perimeter was already a wall of fire. He was locked in. Every escape route he tried was blocked by a sea of heat. He was trapped in a cage of his own making. Then, the first meteor hit. The explosion was deafening. The ground buckled and groaned. Ancient, crumbling stone walls vanished instantly, replaced by a storm of dust and fire. With just that one strike, the shadow lurker hiding in the darkness was torn apart. His body disintegrated, his flesh incinerated before he could even scream. Meteors continued to rain down, sending shockwaves of heat screaming in every direction. Anything that could burn was instantly ignited. The shadow-horned beasts caught in the blast didn't even have time to howl. They were simply erased. Even the rotworms hiding deep in the sewers were blasted into charred powder by the sheer force of the thermal waves. It was a localized apocalypse, a rain of fire from the heavens. The ruins within a 1,000-meter radius were leveled. Buildings that had stood for centuries were flattened into pancakes. The ground was pockmarked with massive craters filled with bubbling, molten lava. Anything that hadn't escaped the blast zone was gone, turned into nothing but ash and drifting embers. I hadn't expected the power of the falling star spell to be this terrifying. On the edge of the ruins, a team of professionals scrambled out of the dust, looking back at the inferno with pale faces. Their hearts were hammering against their ribs. That scene of total destruction would be burned into their memories forever. They had walked right to the edge of death. If they had been just a few seconds slower, they would have been buried or burned alongside the monsters. I stood there, staring at the destruction I'd caused. I was just as shocked as they were. The damage was far greater than when I had used it in the dungeon. Back then, I had used a 10,000-fold amplification. This time, I had pushed it to nearly 50,000. I hadn't held anything back because I wanted that assassin dead. Notifications began to flood my vision, pinging incessantly. I had killed a level 54 shadow-horned beast, 300,000 experience. A level 72 mutated shadow horned beast, 5.4 million experience. And then, the big one. I had slain a level 90 shadow horned beast king, a regional boss. The rewards were staggering. 100 million experience points, 5,000 skill experience, 5 set-piece equipment items, a dark orb, 10 entry tickets to the Skysea Ruins dungeon, a class advancement certificate, 2 skill scrolls, and since it was a first kill, I received 10 books of knowledge and 50 attribute pages. My level didn't just rise, it exploded. I watched the numbers climb from 13 to 14, then 15, and finally hit 30. I stopped at level 30. That was the cap for a first-tier professional. I couldn't go any higher until I completed my class advancement. I looked at my overflowing inventory. Leveling up by hunting high-level mobs gave massive bonuses, and the drop rate was insane. My bag was almost full, even with items stacking. I needed to expand my storage with gold, but I was broke. I'd have to sell this gear once I got back to the city. I opened my status window to check my progress. My spirit attribute had skyrocketed to 670 points, more than double my other stats. This was thanks to the attribute pages I'd consumed. As a first-tier professional, I could use up to 300 of these pages. Between my natural growth and these bonuses, I realized I could potentially push my spirit to 910 points before even advancing to my second tier. The problem was the cost. These pages were rare drops from bosses or first kill rewards. In the Heavenly Book Pavilion, a single page cost 500 gold coins. That was more expensive than most Tier 1 gear. But gear is temporary. Attributes are forever. I did the math. To max out my attributes before my class trial, I need about 60,000 gold coins to buy the remaining pages. Looking at the mountain of materials and gear I'd just looted, I figured I could easily clear a few 100,000 gold. I made a decision. I wouldn't advance until every single attribute point was maxed out. I scrolled through the kill logs one last time, looking for the main target. There it was. Level 87 Shadow Walker. A third-tier assassin. He had dropped 7 pieces of equipment, 10 invisibility potions, and nearly 100 recovery potions. My brow furrowed. Assassins were notorious for killing other players for loot because of their stealth skills, but I didn't think this guy was just a random thief. He had been waiting for me. He had a purpose. Someone had sent him. I looked down at the Shadow Walker's loot. It didn't make sense. I was wearing basic clothes and had no visible gear. I didn't look like a rich target. Why would a third-tier assassin waste his time on a nobody like me? The answer lay in the items he dropped. When a professional dies, most of their inventory spills out like a fountain of wealth. This guy's inheritance was actually worth more than the level 90 boss I'd just killed. It's the grim reality of the wilderness. Killing players is often more profitable than killing monsters. Among the gold and potions, I found a small token. On the front, the character, Zhou, was carved in elegant script. On the back, it read Enforcer. The pieces clicked together. In Shanghai City, there were many people named Zhou, but only one Zhou family had the power to keep a third-tier professional as a personal enforcer. This was one of the 4 great families. The name Zhou Luochen flashed in my mind. He was the only person from that family I knew. We weren't friends. I had spent years at the top of the rankings, while he fluctuated between 3rd and 10th place. More importantly, I knew he was obsessed with Lin Muxue. He acted like a gentleman on the surface, but underneath, he was a snake. Back when rumors first started about me and Muxue, he sent people to warn me off. I didn't have the power to fight back then, and Muxue had to step in to settle it. And now, he wanted me dead just because of a petty crush. My eyes turned cold. If I didn't have my system, that assassin would have ended me. Zhou Luochen wasn't trying to teach me a lesson. He wanted me erased from the world. Zhou Luochen, I whispered into the wind. You'd better stay inside the city walls forever. If you step out, I'll pay this debt back 100 times over. I wasn't the type to forgive and forget. If he played for keeps, so would I. With my current strength, I didn't even fear a 5th-tier professional. There were only a handful of those in all of Shanghai City. If someone truly pushed me, nobody in this city could stop me from killing. Still, I had to be smart. I could ignore the local powerhouses, but the city was backed by the Federation. I wasn't ready to fight the entire world yet. I needed more power. My survival skills were still lacking. If a 4th or 5th tier professional got past my long-range attacks, I'd be in trouble. I stood in the middle of the burning ruins of Tianhai City. The world around me was a literal hell's cape of fire. I started casting. One fireball every second. My plan was simple. My heaven-burning meteor was as strong as a 5th tier spell, but it wasn't a guaranteed win against a 5th tier expert. I needed the 100,000 times amplification effect. To get that, I needed to cast 50,000 more fireballs. With the massive pile of mana potions I'd looted from the assassin, I didn't have to worry about my energy. I could reach my goal in a single day. I stayed put. The destruction from my earlier meteors had turned the ruins into a forbidden zone. The monsters were either dead or gone, and any sane professional had already fled the heat. No one would disturb me here. Unlike the dungeon worlds, the real world was stable. I didn't have to worry about the space collapsing no matter how much power I unleashed. While I was calmly grinding my skill count, Shanghai City was panicking. At the Crisis Warning Center, red lights flashed across every console. Staff members scrambled to contact every major faction. Massive elemental fluctuations detected in the Tianhai City ruins, a technician shouted. It's fire type. Coverage area is 5 kilometers. Danger level assessed at level 5. A level 5 alarm was the city's highest threshold. The report was immediately uploaded to the provincial capital and the Federation. A temporary state of martial law was declared. The city gates were locked. People could enter, but no one could leave. The city's defensive array was primed for activation. Should we recall the army from the mines? An officer asked. I had no idea that my training session was acting like a boulder dropped into a still pond. I had sent shockwaves through the entire government. The city's top leaders gathered in the command center. City Lord He Xiaoyu, General Gao Jun, and Song Jingran, the president of the professional guild. All three were 5th-tier professionals, the peak of Shanghai City's power. Behind them stood a dozen 4th-tier elites. Every eye was glued to the main screen. Satellite images showed the ruins transformed into a sea of lava and flame. Massive craters scarred the earth. The fire wasn't going out, it was spreading. On a smaller screen, a grainy video played. It showed the meteors falling from the sky. Even through the blurry footage, the sheer, crushing pressure of the spell was terrifying. Is that a person? City Lord He Xiaoyu pointed to a faint, blurry figure standing motionless in the center of the inferno. Sir, that's the clearest shot we have, a technician replied. The fire elements are so intense they're jamming our satellite sensors. He Xiaoyu, a refined-looking man with sharp, intelligent eyes, turned to the room. What do you make of this? It's fire magic, someone said. Looks like a Tier 5 spell. Tier 5, another voice questioned. Since when does a Tier 5 spell cover miles of land? If we're talking about the total danger zone, it's closer to 10 miles. This has to be the work of a high-level Tier 5 archmage at the very least. Everyone's attention shifted to Song Jingran, the president of the professional guild. He was a white-haired veteran and a 5th-tier mage himself. Though he specialized in water magic, his knowledge was vast. He studied the screen with a grim intensity. He explained that the fire magic I was using looked like the 5th-tier spells Heavenly Flame Meteor or Starfall, but there were two major differences. First, the intensity. The fire wasn't normal. It was a high-level elemental flame, something usually seen in 7th-tier spells. It wasn't going out. It was spreading, consuming everything it touched. Second was the scale. The core impact zone spanned 3 kilometers, but the total area of effect reached 15 kilometers. That was far beyond the limits of any 5th-tier spell. Gao Jun, the commander of the city guard, looked uneasy. He asked for a final verdict. Song Jingran gave two possibilities. Either this person was a 5th-tier archmage with a god-tier skill who could likely defeat Song Jingran in a fight, or, more likely, this was a high-level powerhouse, at least a 6th-tier Grand Magus, if not a 7th-tier Flame Saint. When Song Jingran said 7th tier, the room went silent. If it were a 5th-tier mage, they could fight back using the city's defensive formations. But a 7th-tier powerhouse? They could wipe out the entire city with a wave of their hand. City Lord He Xiaoyu asked if they could identify me. Song Jingran shook his head. He didn't know anyone with this kind of power. He warned that trying to find out might actually be dangerous. Strong people usually have short tempers, and we don't want to offend a man who can summon stars. The leaders wondered why someone so powerful was fishing in a low-level ruin like Tianhai City instead of a high-level battlefield. Ultimately, they decided to lower the alert to level 3 but strictly forbade anyone from leaving the city or approaching the ruins. They just hoped I was passing through. By the second day, the alarms screamed again. The command center was even more crowded than before. When the satellite feed flickered to life, people gasped. My training had intensified. The meteor shower was several times larger and denser than the day before. It looked like the end of the world. Then, they saw me. I was a tall figure wreathed in roaring flames, floating in the center of the inferno like a god. On screen, I raised my hand. The falling meteors suddenly stopped. They just hung there, frozen in midair. The command center was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Someone asked if the video had frozen. The technician, drenched in cold sweat, confirmed the feed was live. Then, I moved my hand again. The meteors didn't fall. They began to orbit me, circling my body in a terrifying dance of fire. Song Jingran's voice trembled as he spoke. He was certain now. This was the work of a 7th-tier flame saint. He ordered the footage to be sent to the capital and the Federation immediately. An unregistered 7th-tier powerhouse was a massive variable. If I were an enemy or a cultist, Shanghai City was already dead. I had no idea they were watching. I was lost in the feeling of the god of flame possession, the 100,000x visual effect granted by my system. I wasn't human anymore. I had transformed into a 5-meter-tall giant of crimson gold, radiating pure majesty. This form allowed me to merge with the ultimate fire element. I had no physical body to hit. I was immune to physical attacks and took 0 damage from fire. Every flame in the area was mine to command, and my skill power had doubled. Standing there, surrounded by my orbiting suns, I truly felt like the only god in this world. Normal fire mages have a major weakness. No matter how powerful their spells are, they always have to deal with long cooldowns. But for me, that rule didn't exist. I could cast a skill every single second. As long as my mana held out, I could stay in this flame god form forever. I could spam flame dragon pillars and heaven-burning meteors without stopping, and each one was stronger and wider than the last. Most importantly, I could turn into pure elements at will. Physical attacks passed right through me. My fire resistance was at 100%, making me completely immune to any heat. Even if 100 Third Realm Shadow Walkers attacked me at once while I stood perfectly still, they couldn't even scratch me. It was honestly ridiculous. I spent time flying through the sea of fire, testing my limits. Everywhere I looked, every spark and ember was under my absolute control. I realized the flame god form had even more potential than I first thought. If I chose to stick strictly to the path of a fire mage, I could easily reach the very end of that road. My fireball technique had already reached the 100,000x amplification mark. The next stage was a million-fold increase. Even if I didn't eat or sleep and cast it once every second, I'd still need 10 days of nonstop grinding to get there. I decided to pivot. My Gale technique was lagging behind at only a 200x increase. I was level 30 now. Even without officially advancing my class, I had 2 empty skill slots waiting to be filled. I debated what to pick. Attack, defense, healing, control? While still in my flame god form, I tried to summon the wind elements, but they were instantly incinerated by my aura. I had to consciously suppress my flames just to let the breeze get near me. I knew lightning and fire were the most destructive elements. I thought about saving 1 slot for a lightning skill. My strength was raw power, so I figured I should push that advantage to the limit. I wasn't being reckless. I was being practical. My current attacks were too one-dimensional. Gale had a wind blade effect, but the damage was too low to matter in a real fight. The elemental transformation was great, but what if I fought someone else who was immune to fire? I needed variety. For the final slot, I leaned toward defense or healing. A defense skill would keep me alive, and a healing skill would let me recover without relying on others. Unlike other adventurers, I didn't have a team. I didn't have a tank to protect me or a priest to mend my wounds. I was walking this path alone, which meant I had to be a one-man army. I was interested in rare powers like space, time, or holy magic, But those skill scrolls were impossible to find on the market. You needed incredible luck just to see one. Most of those were high-tier spells with massive cooldowns anyway. I decided to focus on what I had. The system was my real trump card. As long as I kept stacking multipliers, even a basic element would become godlike. My fireball had already evolved from simple sparks into the domineering crimson gold flames I held now. I started grinding Gale. Asterisk ding. Gale used. Power doubled. Current multiplier, 1000x. Asterisk. Reaching the 1000x mark unlocked a new effect, Meteor Blade Shield. It allowed me to merge with the wind, giving me the speed of a falling meteor and a massive boost to my evasion. Everywhere I moved, I left behind a trail of razor-sharp wind blades. The faster I moved, the more blades I produced, and the higher the damage became. This was exactly what I wanted, pure, unadulterated speed. Another day passed. I pushed Gale to the 10,000x mark and unlocked the Gale domain. I could now manifest a sphere of wind 500 meters wide. Inside this dome, I could shred anything to pieces. I could fly freely, ignore obstacles, and dodge every single incoming attack with a 100% success rate. I even gained temporary control over 100 different low-tier wind spells. I tested it immediately. A massive green sphere erupted from my body, stretching out until it covered the entire area. It wasn't just a circle on the ground. It was a total sphere of influence. Inside this domain, I felt invincible. It acted like a cage for my enemies. Unless someone had the power to break a 10,000x amplified domain, which would require at least a 6th-tier skill, they were trapped with me. Now, I just needed the 100,000x effect. My Gale cast time was down to 2 seconds. To get the next 90,000 stacks, I needed about 50 hours of continuous casting. Factoring in breaks for food and sleep, it would take me 3 days. 3 days wasn't long at all. Once I had 100,000x multipliers on both fire and wind, I would essentially be wielding the power of 6th-tier forbidden magic while only being at the first realm. The Lin family wouldn't know what hit them. With these new powers, I knew I could walk through Shanghai City without anyone daring to touch me. But I wasn't ready to leave yet. I had a gut feeling that the 100,000x milestone for Gale would be something special. After all, Fireball had given me the Flame God possession. Gale wouldn't let me down. Besides, the ruins of Tianhai City had essentially become my private territory. No one was brave enough to disturb me here. I could stack my multipliers in peace. Days passed. At the gates of Shanghai City, the atmosphere was tense. The city lord, He Qiaoyu, stood atop the walls dressed in his finest gold-embroidered robes. A group of the city's strongest experts stood behind him, their expressions a mix of respect and anxiety. They were all staring at the horizon. Suddenly, a streak of deep purple light tore through the clouds like a blade cutting through silk. A massive wave of energy surged toward the city. The mages on the wall turned pale. They felt the elemental mana in the air vanish, suppressed by an invisible force. Their own internal power felt strangled. A beast emerged from the clouds, a dark, jade heavenly lion. It had the wings of an eagle and the body of a lion, covered in dark purple scales etched with anti-magic runes. As it roared, the air vibrated so hard that the defensive enchantments on the city walls flickered and dimmed. Sitting on its back was a tall man in heavy armor. He looked like a living fortress. His armor, forged from deep-sea cold iron and anti-magic crystals, was pitch black. In the center of his chest plate sat a fist-sized anti-magic core, glowing with a light that devoured any magic that came near it. This was the inspector. His eyes swept over the crowd with cold authority. The city lord and his men bowed immediately, not daring to look up. The beast landed silently on the wall, showing perfect control. "Welcome to Shanghai City, Lord Inspector," He Qiaoyu said, his voice trembling. Even as a melee fighter, he felt crushed by the man's presence. Hovering above the knight's head were his stats for all to see. He wasn't hiding anything. Level 172. 6th turn epic class, anti-magic knight. His name was Tang Qiyuan. "Cut the small talk," Tang Qiyuan said, his voice deep and gravelly. "I have work to do. Is that person still in the Tianhai ruins?" The Federation was worried. Multiple meteor strikes had been reported in the ruins, suggesting an unregistered sixth-turn Grand Magister was lurking nearby. Shanghai City had 3 million people. They couldn't leave a potential threat like that unchecked. They sent Tang Chiyuan specifically because his class was the ultimate counter to mages. If this stranger turned out to be an enemy, Tang Chiyuan was the executioner. The fires in the ruins are still burning, He Xiaoyu replied. He's likely still there. Then let's go. Lead the way, Tang Chiyuan commanded. The dark jade heavenly lion took flight instantly. He Xiaoyu and a local association president, Song Jingran, scrambled onto a storm griffin to follow. Even at full speed, their third-tier mount struggled to keep up with the inspector's sixth-tier beast. Tang Chiyuan eventually slowed down so they could talk. Has he killed anyone? Has he attacked the city? Tang Chiyuan asked. No, He Xiaoyu said. Professionals coming back from the ruins say he hasn't targeted anyone. He stays within the ruins and hasn't approached the city gates. Tang Chiyuan nodded. If it were a hostile mage, the city would already be in ruins. But even a neutral powerhouse was a variable the Federation wanted to control. When we meet him, watch your tone, he warned. Do not offend him. Meanwhile, back in the ruins, I was exhausted but focused. A notification rang in my head. Ding. Galecast. Multiplier. 99,998x. Ding. Galecast. Multiplier. 99,999x. Ding. Galecast. Multiplier. 100,000x. A final chime echoed, louder than the rest. Gale has reached 100,000x multiplier. Special effect unlocked. Void Demon Emperor. I let out a long breath and stopped casting. My arms were sore, but I felt a new connection forming in my mind. This effect was completely different from the others. The Void Demon Emperor allowed me to tap into the mysterious Void Realm and form a soul contract with a legendary beast. It was a descendant of a divine creature that controlled the wind of the void, a force capable of shredding anything. It could fly thousands of miles in an instant. Most importantly, while it was summoned, any damage I took would be shared with the beast. I stared at the skill description, stunned. I was a mage, but my ultimate wind spell had just turned me into a summoner. I didn't think the development path of my skills could get any weirder. Gale was a basic wind spell, yet its 100,000 times multiplier effect had turned me into a summoner. I had just gained the ability to call forth a Void Demon Emperor. It wasn't a bad thing. As a descendant of a divine beast, its combat power would be immense. It could serve as both a high-speed mount and a powerful battle partner. There was only one catch. This wasn't some magical construct made of energy. It was a real living creature from another realm. If it died in battle, I would face a massive penalty and have to wait 10 days before I could bridge the gap to the Void Realm again to contract a new one. I stood in the ruins, analyzing the skill, when a voice suddenly boomed across the sky. It carried a weight that made the very air feel heavy. Would Your Excellency be willing to come out and meet us? My heart skipped a beat. I didn't hesitate. Golden red flames erupted from my body, manifesting the massive form of the rock god statue around me. I knew my natural defense was weak, and I couldn't afford to be careless. I looked up toward the source of the voice. High above the sea of flames, several dark figures hovered in the sky. I wondered if they were powerhouses from Shanghai City. It was the closest base city to these ruins, so it made sense they were monitoring the area. I had assumed the terrifying power of my falling stars would keep them away, but it seemed I was wrong. I frowned, debating whether to show myself. With 2 maxed-out skill effects, I wasn't afraid of a level 6 professional, let alone level 5. But I didn't want to blow my cover. Being a mediocre student was the perfect camouflage. If people like Zhou Luo thought I was weak, they would only send low-level assassins that I could easily kill. If the world knew my true strength, my enemies would send level 6 experts, or worse. Excellency, please do not worry, the voice called out again. It belonged to Tang Chiyuan, a forbidden magic knight. We have no ill intentions. We were simply passing by and wanted to say hello. As I deliberated, I felt a strange ripple in the air. My burning sea of flames was being suppressed by a powerful force. This wasn't the strength of a level 5 professional. The Federation must have sent someone from the capital, likely a level 6 expert. I realized that even if I tried to hide, they probably wouldn't stop searching for me. Up in the clouds, Tang Chiyuan stood with City Lord He Qiaoyu and Guild President Song Jingran. The two local leaders looked grim, feeling the heat of the flames even from this distance. "Sir, does he refuse to see us?" He Qiaoyu asked nervously. "Don't be in a hurry." "Wait," Tang Chiyuan replied. He was secretly sweating. His anti-magic aura was suppressing the flames, but it was taking everything he had. He wasn't entirely sure he could win if a fight broke out. "If it comes to blows, do you have the upper hand?" He Qiaoyu whispered. "If he is at my level, it's a 50-50 split," Tang Chiyuan admitted. The two local officials gasped. A forbidden magic knight was supposed to be the natural counter to all mages. Seeing their shock, Tang Chiyuan added, "But if I use my mount, I have an 80% chance." Suddenly, a piercing cry shattered the silence. It sounded like a phoenix, but carried a metallic, soul-crushing resonance. The clouds in the sky froze. This wasn't the sound of a common bird. It was the roar of the Void Demon Emperor. The sound wave hit us like a physical wall, causing the mana in the air to churn violently. Tang Chiyuan's forbidden zone, which usually suppressed all elements, began to crack. The mounts the three men were riding panicked. The two lower-level flying beasts were knocked unconscious instantly, falling toward the earth. He Qiaoyu and Song Jingran had to scramble, activating levitation scrolls just to stay in the air. Even Tang Chiyuan's specialized mount, the dark Jade Sky Lion, trembled with primal fear. It was the instinctual terror of a creature facing an ancient god. Then, a cyclone of green wind tore through the sea of flames. The Void Demon Emperor soared into the sky. Its feathers were a stunning jade green, trailing blue and gray light like a comet. 9 long tail feathers flowed behind it, each one shimmering with lethal wind energy. It let out another cry, its eyes full of cold, regal arrogance. Standing firmly on the back of this terrifying beast was a figure encased in golden-red armor. I remained within the rock god statue, my true face hidden from their sight. "What do you want with me?" I asked, my voice amplified and echoing with divine authority. I looked at the three men. I recognized the city lord and the guild president from the news, but they were just background characters now. The man in the lead was the real threat, a level 172 forbidden magic knight. He had his stats set to public, a display of confidence that served as both a greeting and a warning. I kept my own aura tightly controlled, watching them through the eyes of a god. Tang Chiyuan didn't hide his stats. He stood there as a level 172 forbidden magic knight, a clear warning to anyone watching. He represented the Federation, and he wanted me to know it. For a mage like me, a forbidden magic knight was a natural enemy. They were built to suppress elemental powers. In a one-on-one fight, the knight almost always won. He spoke with a voice that was calm but carried the weight of his office. He introduced himself as an inspector for the Nanjiang province. He told me he'd seen the meteors falling over Shanghai City for days and feared a disaster was coming. He apologized for the intrusion, claiming he didn't know a master was practicing here. He was respectful, but I could see the calculation in his eyes. He was weighing his options. He saw my flames, and he saw the Void Demon Emperor beneath me. Even as a high-level knight, he knew a fight against 2 sixth-turn entities would be a gamble he might not win. I felt a chill of realization. I had been too careless. I thought my display of power would only alert the local leaders in Shanghai City. I never expected the Federation to send a specialized mage killer to my doorstep. I was strong, sure, but I wasn't ready to fight the entire Federation. If this man activated his suppression zone, my elemental powers might vanish instantly. We were both standing on the edge of a blade, neither of us wanting to fall. "The meteors you mentioned were just my skills," I said, my voice echoing through the air. "I didn't realize I would disturb the authorities. Rest assured, I have no intention of damaging the city." Tang Chiyuan let out a visible breath and forced a smile. He called it a misunderstanding. Beside him, the city lord, He Qiaoyu, and the guild president, Song Jingran, finally looked like they could breathe again. The tension that had been strangling the air snapped. Tang wasn't done, though. He asked where I came from and if I was a citizen of the Federation. When I didn't answer, he tried a different approach. He asked what position I held. I remained silent, staring him down through the golden visor of my armor. I wasn't about to give him anything he could use to track me. I apologize if I overstepped, Tang said, quickly pivoting. Could you at least give me a code name? I need to report this to my superiors to close the mission. If you're registered as a friendly, it will prevent unnecessary conflicts with other high-level professionals in the future. It was a fair compromise. Many powerful people in the Federation kept their identities secret. Tang only showed his because his job required him to be a visible deterrent. I thought about the power flowing through me, the divine form I had taken. Call me Yenshin, I replied. Tang flinched. Using the word God in a title was incredibly arrogant. It was a name reserved for the delusional or the truly invincible. He looked at me, trying to figure out which one I was. I didn't care what he thought. It was just a mask, a layer of protection to keep my real life safe. If the Federation wanted a name, I would give them a legend to worry about. A bold name, Tang said with a thin smile. I don't expect you to add me on the standard comms network, but we should have a way to talk. He pulled out a seashell-shaped object, a 1,000-mile sound conch. It was a rare, high-end communication tool. It didn't use the digital grid, which meant it couldn't be tracked or hacked. It was a one-to-one line. I reached out and caught it as he tossed it through the air. And a token from you, he asked. So I can prove I've met you if I ever need to call for your help. I reached down and plucked a jade-green feather from the wing of the Void Demon Emperor. I held it in my hand, letting my golden-red flames wash over it, until the jade was etched with glowing embers. I tossed the feather back to him. This is my token, I said. It's good for one favor. Tang gripped the feather, looking satisfied. He had turned a potential disaster into a connection with a powerful, mysterious mage. He bowed slightly, acknowledging the end of our meeting. I didn't waste another second. I patted the back of the Void Demon Emperor. With a deafening cry, the beast beat its wings. A cyclone of green wind exploded around us, and we shot into the sky. In a heartbeat, we were through the clouds and miles away, leaving the 3 men behind in the dust of my wake. The crisis was over, but the name Yenshin was just beginning to spread. Behind me, the 2 inspectors, He Qiao and his partner, began their slow descent toward the forest floor. They couldn't fly, so they had to make the long trek back on foot. They also had to check if that mad-bee lion-eyed grounded was actually dead or just dreaming. Meanwhile, Tang Chiyuan opened a holographic interface. He was already recording the day's events to report them to the higher-ups. He entered the data, code name, Yenshin. Estimated level, peak of the 6th transition. Primary ability, Heaven-Burning Flames. Support, high order, peak 6th transition wind-type war beast, suspected of possessing divine beast blue phoenix bloodline. Danger level, 6.5 to 7 stars. Origin, claims to be a citizen of the Federation. Relationship, tentatively friendly, contactable. Location, first sighted at the ruins of Skysea City. Soon, the detailed file on Yenshin was uploaded to the Federation's central database. I couldn't help but feel a chill. The Federation's foundation was terrifyingly deep. Just to scout me out, they had sent a powerful 6th transition demon Forbidden Knight. It was a good thing I hadn't shown any hostility towards Skysea City. If I had, they wouldn't have just sent one man. I sat on the back of the Void Demon Emperor as we soared through the 9 heavens. To make sure no one could track my path, I took the long way home. I flew deep into the Thousand Island Sea region, carving a massive arc across the map before heading back. The wilderness was a paradise for monsters, and the sky was no different. Massive flying beasts, the undisputed overlords of the clouds, patrolled the air. But the moment the Void Demon Emperor appeared, they scattered like startled sparrows. I looked down at the beast beneath me. Its attributes were, frankly, insane. A screen flickered to life in my vision, displaying its stats. Name, Void Demon Emperor, soul contracted. Race, Divine Emperor Clan. Level, 180, strength scales with contractor. Strength, 17,000, plus 240%. Spirit, 32,000, plus 500%. Agility, 40,000, plus 600%. Constitution, 25,000, plus 240%. Mana, 19.52 million. Health, 9.09 million. I stared at those numbers until my eyes hurt. The Void Demon Emperor's panel was a masterpiece of destruction. Compared to her, I felt like a beggar. My highest attribute, Spirit, was barely 670 points. Her Spirit was 32,000. And that wasn't even her best stat. Her Agility was 40,000 base, with a 600% bonus. Doing the math, her actual Agility was 300,000. No wonder the world looked like a blur. We were covering thousands of miles in a heartbeat. Even more ridiculous was the mana. It wasn't measured in points, it was measured in millions. 19 million. That was enough for me to cast tens of millions of fireballs without breaking a sweat. And with 9 million health points, she was a living fortress. Because we shared a soul contract, any damage I took could be transferred to her. Unless someone could hit me with over 9 million damage in a single strike, I was effectively immortal. To kill me, they had to go through her first. Level 180 represented the absolute cap for a 6th transition. This meant Tang Chiyuan, the knight from before, probably had stats in this ballpark. I felt a wave of relief that I hadn't picked a fight with him. Even if I won, I would have brought the entire Federation down on my head. I needed to get stronger. Fast. I spent the next hour studying the contract. We weren't master and servant. We were battle partners. Her level would rise as I grew. I also noticed a new talent in my own window, God's Envoy contract summoning. I started to wonder what was the Void Realm. Was it a world like ours, or something like the Abyss? And why would a living, breathing divine Emperor clan creature sign a soul contract with me? It wasn't just this one bird, either. I was contracted to the entire race. If this one died, I could just summon another. Why would they choose me? Was it just the system, or was there something deeper? I didn't have the answers, but I wasn't complaining. Having a 180-level divine protector was cooler than anything those noble families could dream of. None of their heirs had a 6th transition bodyguard. I noticed a skill in her list, Cyan Feather Transformation. It said she could change her form. Can you turn into a human? I whispered. The Void Demon Emperor let out a low hum. Suddenly, her massive body was engulfed in a brilliant cyan light. A second later, the weight beneath me shifted. The giant bird was gone. In her place was a young girl in a cyan dress. I nearly fell off as we descended toward a clearing. She was breathtaking. Her face was perfect, blending a cold, celestial air with a regal grace. Her skin was translucent, glowing with a faint jade luster, and felt cool to the touch, like a mountain breeze. Her eyebrows were sharp and elegant, like willow leaves, tilting upward with a hint of a phoenix's arrogance. Her eyes were a pure, deep cyan. When she blinked, I could see tiny wind patterns swirling in her pupils. She wore a short, cross-collared robe of deep jade green, the edges embroidered with wind swirl patterns that seemed to move on their own. Her sleeves were wide and airy, fluttering like wings. Her long skirt was a translucent flow of pale blue-green, stitched with 9 phoenix tail feathers that looked so real they seemed to sway in the wind, shedding tiny sparkles of light. I stood there, completely stunned, staring at the girl who had just been a mountain-sized monster. I had never seen anyone so beautiful in my life. She didn't look like a real person. She looked like a goddess who had stepped out of a dream. But a second later, the dream turned into a nightmare. I realized the goddess was getting further away. Wait, this wasn't a dream. I was falling. I was plummeting from 10,000 meters in the sky. I'm going to die, I screamed. From this height, I wouldn't just be bruised. I'd be scattered across the ground in pieces. Just as I prepared to try a desperate self-rescue, a cool breeze brushed past me. A graceful figure appeared by my side. 2 soft, delicate hands reached out, gently catching me by the neck and feet. Thanks, I gasped, quickly wrapping my arms around her neck. I could smell a faint, milky fragrance. I never expected that high above the clouds, I'd be getting a Princess Carrie from a celestial beauty. It felt a bit awkward, being held like this. Usually, the hero saves the beauty, but today, the beauty was saving me. The girl's phoenix-like eyes shimmered like green jade. Her red lips parted, but no sound came out. It seemed she didn't know the language of this world yet. But through our soul contract, I understood her perfectly. You're welcome, she communicated silently. We are partners. I looked at her exquisite face, only inches from mine. I could feel her breath. It felt surreal. To be honest, The 100,000 times effect on my Gale technique kept blowing my mind. Who would have thought a simple speed spell would evolve into a peerless girl? This wasn't even a summoning class. With a sharp cry, she transformed back into the 30-meter-tall Void Demon Emperor. She tossed me onto her back and turned into a streak of cyan light, racing toward Shanghai City. We stopped about 10 kilometers outside the city. I asked her to land. "Can you stay in the human world forever?" I asked, looking at her. She stood there with the wind swirling around her long, waist-length hair. She nodded and gave me a small smile, revealing 2 adorable dimples. Through our soul connection, I learned a lot. Her true strength was much higher than this, but because of my level, she was capped at level 180. She could stay here as long as her energy didn't run out. If she got exhausted, she'd have to return to the Void Realm to recharge her essence. When I tried to ask more about her home or her tribe, she just shook her head. She wasn't ready to share that yet. "I should give you a name," I said. "I can't just call you Void Demon Emperor all the time." That was the name of her race, not her personal name. She brushed her hair back, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. It seemed she had never had a name of her own back in the Void Realm. "My last name is Jiang," I mused. "So yours should be Jiang too. How about Jianglinger? Or Jiang Huang?" She thought about it for a second. "Jiang Huang, she whispered. Her voice was soft and sweet, like a little girl's. "All right, Jiang Huanger it is," I laughed. She wasn't unable to speak. She just hadn't learned the words yet. She was like a blank slate. From what I could gather, the Void Realm was a closed-off world where only her kind lived. There was one more thing. If she died in the real world, she wouldn't truly stay dead. Her soul was anchored in the Void Realm. She would eventually revive there, though it might take time. And if I summoned a new protector too soon after her death, I might get a different Void Demon Emperor entirely. I didn't want that. I wanted her. As we approached the towering walls of Shanghai City, a problem cropped up. "I have to enter the base city now," I told her. "You look human, but you don't have a federal ID." The gates had strict checkpoints to keep out spies and monsters. Some high-level monsters could take human form, so the guards were always on high alert. If she couldn't prove she was a citizen, we couldn't walk through the front door. She could probably level the whole city if she wanted to, but I didn't want that kind of heat. I didn't know if that magic-suppressing knight, Tang Qinyuan, was still lurking around. With a flash of light, Jiang Huanger shrank down. She turned into a tiny cyan bird, no bigger than my palm, and perched on my shoulder. "Perfect," I grinned. Her transformation skill was a lifesaver. No one would suspect a tiny bird was actually a level 180 world boss. With her there, I felt invincible. She had millions of health points. Unless someone could deal 9 million damage in a single hit, I was safe. No more near-death experiences like the one in the Tianhai ruins. In this world, combat pets weren't rare. Rich people kept them as status symbols, and the military used them as mounts. Most people would just assume she was a harmless pet. The walk through the gate was easy. The guards didn't even give the bird a second look. "Hey, Jiang Yuan," a familiar voice shouted. I turned around. Near another checkpoint, a tall figure in a white priest's robe was running toward me, waving his arms excitedly. It was my best friend, Zhao Biao. The sight was almost ridiculous. He was built like a tank, broad-shouldered and rugged, but he was wearing the holy, delicate robes of a healer. The sight was almost ridiculous. Zhao Biao was built like a tank, with broad shoulders and a rugged frame, but he was wrapped in the delicate, holy white robes of a priest. The contrast was jarring. "I finally found you," Zhao Biao shouted. He reached out and punched me playfully in the chest. "Did you just get back from leveling up?" I took a good look at him. Aside from the white robe, he had several new pieces of gear equipped. Most of them were basic white-tier items, glowing with a faint, pale light, but the staff in his hand was different. It had a green tint. It was a green-tier weapon, a massive upgrade from the cheap clothes he wore before. Standing behind him were Luo Xing and a few others from their team. They all had new equipment too. It was clear that Zhao Biao was doing well for himself in this group. "Yeah," Zhao Biao said, grinning. "I hit level 12. We spent the whole day grinding mobs and saved up a decent amount of gold. We came back to rest and restock on potions, but I'm also planning to buy my second skill scroll." His smile faltered slightly as he looked me up and down. Unlike him, I hadn't changed at all. I was still wearing my ordinary, everyday clothes. There wasn't a single piece of visible armor or gear on me. "What level are you now?" he asked. His voice was cautious, like he was afraid of hurting my feelings. Me? I looked at him. "If I told you, it would probably give you a heart attack." I didn't give him a straight answer. I was already level 30. If it wasn't for the fact that I hadn't completed my class advancement yet, I would have been even higher. Telling him the truth really would have shocked him. Nobody leveled up that fast. Even someone like Lin Muxue, with her epic tier class, couldn't have hit level 30 in such a short time. Most professionals took at least a month of hard grinding to reach that point. "All right, keep your secrets then," Zhao Biao said, not pushing it. He shrugged and changed the subject. "The rules for this year's unified exam were just released. Have you seen them yet?" "Not yet," I admitted. "Is there anything different from previous years?" I had been stuck in the Tianhai City ruins for days. My smart bracelet couldn't get a signal down there, so I was completely out of the loop. The unified exam usually happened 1 month after the awakening ceremony. That month was meant for students to grind and get as strong as possible. If you wanted to get into a university, you had to take the exam and meet the score requirements. If you failed, your options were limited to joining local guilds, small gangs, or private teams. Some people with connections could join major financial corporations, but those corporations didn't hire dead weight. If you couldn't even get into a professional university, a corporation wouldn't want you either. "The exams for lifestyle classes and combat classes are separate," Zhao Biao explained. "I'll skip the lifestyle stuff and get straight to the combat rules. This year, the exam is split into 3 stages. He held up a finger. "First is the elimination stage. If your level is below 20, you're out. No university for you. Period." Support classes like his were counted as combat classes for the exam. I nodded. The elimination stage was brutal and simple. Hit level 20 in a month or go home. It was a bit of a challenge for some, but if you couldn't even manage that, you probably didn't belong in a university anyway. If you passed that, you moved to the second stage, the retake, Zhao Biao continued. Once you reach this part, you're basically guaranteed a spot in a school. They calculate your score based on your level and the rarity of your class. Then they rank every student in the entire federation. The catch is that you don't get to pick your school. The schools pick you. You just wait to be assigned. The higher your rank, the better the university. The federation was massive with a huge population. There were tens of thousands of professional universities. The best of the best were the 5 great academies, followed by the 100 prestigious schools. Everything else was considered second-rate. The 5 great academies had very limited slots, and every year, the competition for them was bloodier than the last. Then there's the third stage, Zhao Biao said, his eyes gleaming. The genius competition. To enter this, you have to meet one of 2 conditions. Either you hit level 30, or your class rarity is